just a bloke in a bar.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Bloke in a Bar. Do not forget, Bloke is going on a live tour in the country for the first 4 weeks of the NRL season. We're going to Armidale, we're going to Wagga, we're going to Rockhampton, and we're going to Cairns. It's myself, it's Matty the Waterboy, unfortunately. It's also Guru and Timmy, and we'll be talking all things rugby league, a live show, and then we getting in the crowd, having some beers. So set aside that if you live in any of those areas, set aside the Friday. Huge live show, country tour, powered by Ringers Western. We'll also be doing a Ringers Western collaboration. So, it's just so much stuff going on during that live tour, guys. So set aside the time. We cannot wait to get out and meet the great country folk of Australia. But I'm here with the great James Magnussen. How you going, brother?
Good, Kempy. Mate, when you speak Friday night in the country, that's fight night.
Oh, really?
Friday night in the country. I grew up in Port Macquarie. Yeah. Sad to hear you're not going to Port Macquarie, but Friday night is just Blue City. Oh, really? The rum and cokes and the blues. That's what happens in the country, mate. So just be wary.
I want to start fucking boxing training.
Yeah.
Fucking
underhooks.
Could you imagine if I went out and got towed up?
Oh.
I come all the way out here to say hi and I got bashed for it.
Just send Guru in.
Yeah, the big fella. Kung Fu Panda. Mate, how you going? Obviously, we work at SEN together, which is great. How you going at the moment?
Yeah, really good. It's been, since football season, so probably 4 or 5 months since I've seen you.
Yeah.
You're looking streamlined.
Mate, I've lost...
What's the numbers?
The numbers are big. Are big. So I've lost on the scale, about 12 kilos.
Yeah.
But fat-wise, I reckon I would have
muscle.
lost maybe 15,
Nice.
maybe even 17.
How far off playing weight are you?
Still quite a while. I'm about 93, 92 now.
Yeah.
But my playing weight at this age would probably be about 87, 88.
Yeah,
Because as you get older, obviously, it's harder to get down.
It's so hard to keep weight. I was the same in swimming. When I'm swimming 30 hours a week, you're on your feet running 30 hours a week. It's hard to keep muscle mass on.
Absolutely.
So in retirement, it's easier to bulk up a bit.
Well, that's the good thing about with footy. It's the running, but it's also the physical, the contact, defensive drills.
Yeah.
Because you're breaking down. You might go do the craziest weight sesh, and then an hour later you're doing the craziest contact sesh ever. So you've just broken all your muscle. It's just almost not pointless, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But mate, how's it been? Have you been how long? So you've been at SEN for 2 years now?
Yeah.
2 years now? 1 year.
1 year.
1 year.
Yeah.
Is this your first foray into radio?
Yeah, first permanent gig on radio. So I've done bits and pieces around the Olympics, Com Games, stuff like that. Always loved it. But first regular segment, and to be honest, rugby league was my first love when it came to sport. And so I feel so much more comfortable talking about rugby league than swimming.
No way.
When I go on and do a swimming show, let's say the Olympics is on and I've got a week coming up of TV or radio. I'm going off researching what is the men's breaststroke record, or what are the women's 100 freestyle times or whatever, because I don't know it.
No way.
I was always on swim teams and always there, but I was doing I was competing and doing my own thing. I didn't watch a lot of swimming.
You weren't a student of swimming kind of thing?
Never.
Yeah.
Never a student. Some of my mates can rattle off, my swimming mates can rattle off records and times and all this stuff. I was never a student of the sport. Whereas rugby league, I don't have to do a second of research. I already watch every game. I already listen to you guys, Hello Sport. I listen to all the content. I watch all the shows, Matty John's show, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So my research is my pastime anyway.
Yeah.
So I find rugby league commentary and I guess talkback shows so easy.
That's really interesting. It's similar to a degree where I still feel more comfortable with a soccer ball at my feet than a footy in my hands, even though obviously I ended up playing footy, so I'm feeling you in regards to that. So who was your team? Who was your team growing up?
Bulldogs.
The doggies.
Always the doggies,
Okay.
yeah. So my old man, I'm from Port Macquarie, but my old man was born in the Bankstown area.
Okay.
Born and bred, and he played a lot of juniors and stuff in the area. So he was a Bulldogs fan, absolute tragic. Moved up North Coastway and met my mum and had me up there. So, but from the moment I could walk or talk, I was a doggies man.
Yep.
And it's been a roller coaster because my whole childhood, we were a juggernaut. Early 2000s Bulldogs, talking Sonny Bill, Willie
Dogs
Mason.
of War kind of
Dogs
thing.
of War.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, I finished school and then slim pickings for the past decade.
What, as a massive doggies fan, because it is quite a polarising situation, what are your thoughts on the Desi Hasler saga? Because There's some that say you are still recovering, and there are
Yeah.
some that say it was more the admin that had that issue.
You know what? So it's really interesting. So I followed the Bulldogs the whole time, went through their successful period. And then when I moved down to Sydney, started going to games and obviously had my swimming career and stuff happening, the club brought me in for different stuff. So like, I went in, met Desi, met the players, met the administration. Todd Greenberg was there at the time, who is, a beast of sports admin.
Yeah.
And I thought it was all super impressive. I knew a bunch of the staff on Des's high performance team. I used the same mindset coach as the Bulldogs used, who was Des Hasler's right-hand man throughout his whole career. And I thought it was a great setup, and I thought what they were doing was great. But in hindsight, having spoken to blokes like Willie Mason, who's been in and around the club, for the best part of his life, I think they did lose a little bit of identity around that.
Okay.
People say we lost the Dogs of War, but when you think the grand finals we made, we had James Graham, Sam Cassiano, Greg Eastwood, they still were Dogs of War,
Josh
really.
Reynolds there?
Josh Reynolds, yeah.
Oh,
they still were Dogs of War.
Yeah.
What they probably lost was the juniors. They weren't bringing through players like Bulldogs had in the past. And that's what I think's taken a little while to recover from. But was it Desi's fault? I don't think so. I remember going to games between 2012 to 2014 with people had huge banners saying Des Hasler's our saviour and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So while ever we were successful, it wasn't Des Hasler's fault.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the success left.
Yeah.
And Des took us to 2 grand finals. I think we missed 1 year of the semis and Des was booted.
I think, and he come like 9th or something.
Yeah.
Or 8th or
which
whatever.
Which now we'd killed to come 9th.
I know, 100%.
So Des copped a pretty stiff run there. And same as he did at Manly, right? Like for whatever reason, Des is polarising and Des does things Des's way.
Yep.
But it works. Des's way works.
Yeah.
Whatever you think about him as a person, I don't care.
Yeah.
His coaching tactics and style is successful.
It's a good point in regards to I have the same feeling with Des, like, okay, is he the perfect man? Obviously not, no one is.
Yeah.
And could have been better with juniors or whatever, but to just look at him and say he's the reason juniors weren't brought through, it's like, come on, man, there's whole teams that take care of the development.
Yeah.
And then you look at the Manly situation. What I was surprised with the Manly situation was that they knew what Des was like. Yeah. So when they come out and kind of basically said that he was hard to work with, it's like, I don't think Desi's changed. He's always been hard to work with.
Yeah.
So I'd love, to be honest, it's one of the periods of time that I think a little doco would be really good on.
Really interesting.
Because it was so dramatic. Like I think, remember after it happened, and there was some pundit saying like what Desi's done was criminal. So it was dramatic.
So I spoke to Willie about it, and he's back at the club now, coaching and doing all that stuff. And he said, "Mate, I didn't feel comfortable or welcome coming back to the club and being around the players." I was like, what an interesting time in their history, right? And interestingly enough about him, he's played all around. He played rugby in France. He's been he's one of the true journeymen, but he identifies as a Bulldog. When you talk about his rugby league career, he's like, I'm a Bulldog.
That afro.
The iconic afro. And he didn't feel comfortable around the club. So something happened there. Something went wrong. Whether that's Des's fault, it can't be solely Des's fault. He doesn't run the head office. He doesn't decide whether Willie Mason feels comfortable walking in the front doors at Belmore, right? And whatever changed, obviously Gus welcomed everyone with open arms, but I think also Aaron Warburton, when he came back to the club, he had a big focus on bringing back ex-players.
So what role does he play?
He's the CEO of the Bulldogs. So he was, when I first moved to Sydney, Aaron Warburton must only be 36, 37 now. He's probably you have to be the youngest CEO in NRL.
For sure. Yeah.
So when I first moved to Sydney, he was doing PR stuff or whatever for the Bulldogs. So he'd say, do you want to come to this event? Come to the chairman's lounge or whatever. And he'd welcome you and say, come to your seat. And this is...
Wow.
He was like the hospo guy.
Now he's CEO?
He's CEO. So he's worked his way up through the entire... So he's a Bulldog at heart. And he's probably seen some of that stuff happening. So he's very in tune with it. And I think he... Along with Gus, along with Cameron Serrato, but remember, there's one guy employing all these people. That's the CEO, and that's Aaron Warburton. So I think he probably doesn't get the limelight, but I think he's a big part in what's happened at the Bulldogs.
And another, I've spoken about it a bit, is the Laundy Group coming on board.
Oh, huge.
And he would have probably had a big part of that.
I'm pretty sure he did that deal.
Yeah. Which is although, yeah, there's salary caps, everything, and I'm not implying anything here, but there's salary caps, everything, but it is so good to have a kind of like a head figure that's financially quite powerful backing a club. It gives the club confidence financially. Yeah. Again, not to do with the salary cap, but just the club as a whole to put things in place to go forward. Whereas you look at some of the clubs that struggle, do they have a powerful backing owner or, you know, person that kind of like is a director or whatever it is kind of thing?
Yeah, salary cap's interesting, right? Because there's your salary, but there's everything around your salary. Yeah. Like if you said to me, we'll pay you double what you're being paid by Australia to go and swim and live in Russia, live in Moscow. I'm not going because I don't want to live in Moscow. It's got a bad reputation over there. Like I don't know what the conditions are like, and I'm not going to be happy. So it doesn't matter that you pay me double. I'm going to stay in Sydney, one of the greatest cities in the world, and swim here. It's the same in rugby league. Like, do you want to go and play for the Roosters or do you want to go and play for the West Tigers? Tigers would offer you more money, but there's the reputation, there's the place on the ladder, there's the surrounds of the club, and then there's the Roosters. They're successful. It's a nice place to live. The reputation's great. Uncle Nick looks after you in life after footy. So the salary cap, it will never be perfect, but it's not an even playing field. And what Gus has done, what Aaron Warburton's done, what the Laundry Group's done is just bring us up level playing field with some of those big clubs. We're not necessarily spending more on the salary cap.
None at all.
What we're doing is we're providing an environment that people want to come to.
Yeah, it's such a good point. Like $9 million spent by the Roosters is not the same as $9 million spent by the Warriors or the Tigers or whatever. And the argument could be, well, the Roosters have earned that through winning comps and winning games and creating a good environment. But it still is, it's almost like a self-perpetuating cycle of like the worst get worse, the best get better, except the Broncos far out with all the money in the world. We can't keep going for it. Anyway, but back to yourself, mate. So you grew up, did you say Port Macquarie?
Port Macquarie.
Did you live there until you were like 16 and then moved to Sydney or?
18.
18.
Yeah, so I finished school up there.
Yeah.
And then moved to Sydney when I was 18. As is the way in like a lot of country towns, there's not a lot of pathways for anything. Sport, academics, jobs, whatever. So I started thinking probably, you know, around 16, 17, what am I going to do? Where am I going to move? And, you know, my parents kind of encouraged that. Like, we don't want you to stay in Port Macquarie beyond school because there's not a lot of job opportunities. There aren't any universities. And if you want to have a crack at swimming, there's not the facilities or the coaches available.
And so that's really interesting because, so were you winning, you know, state titles from Port Macquarie, just training there? Or
so I had some really interesting times where, so I got good at swimming around 16. I grew, I filled out a bit, and I put a lot more focus into it. So by 16, I was training like 9 sessions a week in the pool, lifting weights 2-3 times a week, eating properly, making sacrifices like not going to parties or, you know, all the sacrifices. They call them sacrifices. They're not sacrifices. No. Like I think people sacrifice by going to parties while I was in Barcelona swimming and enjoying myself. Who really sacrificed?
And like, do they remember that party when they were 16? Because I remember winning state titles. To me, it's like my most proudest moment. So I agree with you. And also the reward that we eventually get is worth it. So I agree. It's a really good point in regards to sacrifice.
Yeah, so I don't see it as a sacrifice. But so in Port Macquarie, the pool was open between September and March or April. Then it was closed all winter. So I always swam in summer, rugby league in winter. And the two coexisted quite nicely because I wanted to stay in shape in winter. And I think playing a contact sport or probably a combat sport would be the same. Gives you a certain level of toughness and exposes you to a type of resilience that you might not get in a normal sport. To be able to to develop the skill of getting hit or getting hurt and hopping back up and not showing it and cracking on, I think is a really good life skill. Something that I think differentiated me from a lot of other swimmers in a lot of ways. So when I was 16, I started getting pretty good. I started winning nationals. So I won state, won nationals, all happened in the same year when I was 16. So win my first state champs, win my first nationals.
So when you were 15, how far did you go when you were 15?
I was probably like finals at nationals.
Okay.
But I made my first state at 13.
Yep.
Before that, nothing.
Yeah,
like, not that good. 13 made it, like might have got like 50th in state or whatever. Like wasn't that good, but just made that like nice little progression towards 16. Kept growing, kept developing, kept training super hard. So 16, I make the Australian junior team. Go away on a swim team, and we're going to race against New Zealand, which is easy, like tell them anyway. But there's one thing New Zealand's not good at is swimming. So we go to race New Zealand, and it's in July. And so our pool closed in March or April, so I haven't swum a lap in 3-4 months.
No
and I
way.
get to racing for my first time racing for Australia, and I haven't swum a lap in months. And I'm not swimming the fastest. And the coaches are like blowing up at me saying like, you're not going to get picked on another junior team. Like, you know, this is no good.
Wow.
And I was a sprinter, and they were like, we're going to push you out to doing 200 freestyle as well, which is a stretch at the best of times. So when I haven't swum a lap in months, I wasn't performing that well at this meet, and they were basically saying like, you know, this is terrible. Like you're not representing yourself well.
Yeah.
I had literally no choice.
Yeah.
There was nowhere within an hour's drive of Port Macquarie where I could have trained if I wanted to train.
Yeah.
So it's like, as a guy from the country, what are you meant to do? And then there was another Australian, they picked the Youth Olympics team as well. I come first at nationals in the 100 freestyle. They pick second, third, fourth and fifth to go to the Junior Olympics and leave me off the team.
No way.
And that was just a product of coming from a country town. You're out of sight, out of mind. You don't have the facilities. You don't have the connections. Like I didn't know anyone in the swimming world. My parents don't come from a swimming background. So Junior Olympics when I was 16, they pick second through fifth and leave the gold medalist off the team.
No way.
Yeah.
And so what was their reasoning? Did they even give you an...
Didn't give me a reasoning. No.
Just didn't get
even
selected.
speak to me. Yeah. I only heard about it through seeing the results and stuff. I was like, oh, Youth Olympics are on, and I'm
That
not
is
there.
absolutely wild.
Wild.
Like
it's wild. Yeah.
Like, you could have been so crushed from that you said, you know what? I'm done. I'm going footy. I enjoy footy or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Australia's been robbed of a great swimmer. Because
There's a couple of moments like that throughout my career where they were like kind of, I guess, a fork in the road. It's like, do you go the pity party or do you steel yourself and bounce back from it? And luckily I took the right path that time, but it's definitely a reason why. And swimming had the benefit of the time when I was young growing up. I'm probably a similar age to you, where when we were kids, swimmers were rock stars. Like Ian Thorpe, Grant Hackett, Michael Klim were like rock stars.
Yeah.
And so when I was growing up, it was like, I actually always wanted to be a rugby league player.
Yeah, really.
And my email
what position
address.
did you play?
I started in the backs, and as I got bigger and slower, I ended up at second row. Yeah.
What was your email address?
My email address was the next Sunny Bill at Hotmail, which was it's funny when I moved to Sydney and started swimming. I was like, I'm going to change my Hotmail address. My dreams didn't eventuate.
Oh my god!
I think the time I changed my email address. So I made the Australian swim team at 18, and we're having to fill out like all our forms for like our contact details.
Yep.
And I'm like sitting in the room like with the other Australian swimmers. I'm like, I better just put like James Magnussen at Hotmail or something.
Yeah, 100%. The next Sunny Bill. Oh,
yeah. And whenever I do interviews and stuff, people are like, who are your idols? You know, was it Thorpe? Was it who was it? And I was like, Sunny Bill, Hazemel Masri, Steve Price, like all footballers.
Yeah.
All footballers. That was where swimming was lucky, right? It's like our pathways aren't great. We give nothing to kids in the country who are some of the most resilient kids that, filter through sports and always have been.
100%.
However, we've got this appeal. We've got the glitz and glamour of being an Australian swimmer, which is like the highest mantelpiece in Australian sport. At least it was. A lot of people viewed it that way.
There was a period for sure.
For sure. So for me, it was like, love to be a rugby league player, but I'm much more gifted at swimming. and swimming is like the bee's knees.
Yeah.
So if that happened again and I'm 16 and I've probably got certain physical attributes that could lend themselves to rugby league as well.
Yeah.
If I had just trained harder at that and lifted weights and done all that stuff and bulked up, that's a genuine pathway as well. So I feel like swimming these days would lose so many kids to team sports because you get naturally gifted young athletes.
Yeah.
Swimming is no longer on a pedestal. The money's not great unless you're top couple in the world.
Yeah.
And so if kids these days were getting that same sort of treatment, they just go, boom, rugby league, AFL, netball, whatever it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. I just cannot believe, having been in athletics and it's kind of all a kind of umbrella kind of thing. You got athletics and it's kind of like an umbrella.
Sports. Yeah.
It's just like bizarre that they would just go, nah, the number one guy in the country that won the race, not even like ranked by other people, won the race. So you don't make the junior Olympic side.
Yeah.
What's the thought process then? Is it I need to get closer to a pool, what's the thought process?
The thought process was like, for a lot of my early career was like, I'm going to prove people wrong. So growing up in Port Macquarie, we'd never had a local person go to the Olympic Games.
Yeah, okay.
And so at 16, I started thinking like maybe one day, and that was the first time at 16, I thought maybe one day I could go to the Olympics. They sat us down in this room when we went away on my first junior Australian team, and they said 1 in 5 people in this room will go on to represent Australia at the Olympics. I was like, the dream is like alive now.
Yeah.
I remember one day I was back at school and I'm practicing my signature in the back of, I think it was like history book or something.
Yeah.
Teacher comes over, she's like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm practicing my signature.
No way.
Well, why are you practicing your signature? And I was like, I might go to the Olympics one day. And I've just been fresh off this team, been told you're a 1 in 5 chance. And she said, that's a ridiculous thing to say. Like, you'll never go to the Olympic Games. What? And I was like, and that was pretty common throughout my career. Throughout my childhood was like the only people that ever really believed in me was my mum and dad. They definitely never thought I was going to the Olympic Games, but they believed in me and myself. Everyone around us always was like, that's a silly like pipe dream. Like, you need to be serious about what you're going to actually do because swimming isn't it.
Man, I don't understand. I understand like maybe it comes from a good place where they're trying to like, for the chances of it happening are so small, so I want to give this kid a reality dose. But I'm like, there's a better way to communicate.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome, and maybe you will one day.
Yeah,
but like, just make sure that you know what I mean. I feel like the communication's terrible.
It's really strange as an adult, right? Looking back on it and going, what was in that adult's head? Telling a kid that their dreams are silly.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Doesn't make sense to me. But I guess it's when you get jaded people who maybe haven't achieved their own dreams and think the world's a terrible place, that they kind of pass on that negativity.
Well, I always, whenever someone says, as I got older, I didn't know this when I was fucking 16, when everyone says, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, what they're really saying is, I can't do this, and I can't do that. That's all that's being said to you. Is that they're projecting their limits onto you.
And in every country town out there in Australia, right, there's always going to be a first. First one to go to the Olympics, first one to play NRL, first millionaire, whatever it is, there's going to be a first.
Yeah.
It'll happen. Yeah. Eventually, one day, if it's 100 years, if it's 1,000 years, every town in Australia will have had an Olympian.
Oh.
It'll happen.
Yeah, 100%.
There's no reason why a town can't have an Olympian. There's not talented people in that town?
And like, they're a different kind of human to everyone else? Mate, I agree. I've always had the feeling of, if they can get to the moon on a computer powered less than your phone, and that was made by people, me being good at sport is not that hectic of a pipe dream kind of thing. Okay, so you're six. So this when you were 16, or was it when you're 18 that they didn't take you to
16,
the gym? 16
when they
didn't take you. And so what's the next 24 months? Actually, walk us through your first national gold medal, because it's one of those moments in your life where, like, me personally anyway, like, I only obviously won one, but it's like, if at the end of my life when I lie down in bed and I'm about to die, it will be one of my most cherished memories.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at every step along the way, and you'll know this from athletics, there's always a bigger fish.
Mm.
You know, when you finally win your school carnival and you go to zone and then someone beats you. Then you finally win zone, you go to regional or whatever. And then it's one of those sports where you're like, there's always a guy.
Yeah.
And you get to nationals and you finally win it and you're like, holy shit, there's no more guys.
Yeah, I'm the guy.
I'm the guy.
Yeah. Mate.
And it's really surreal. I remember I was on the Gold Coast. It was in Brisbane where I won my first gold.
Yeah.
And mum and dad took me and my brother to the Gold Coast afterwards and we went to Wet and Wild. And we're standing in the line for a water slide or whatever and I was like, can you believe it, Dad? There's no other 16-year-old here that could beat me in a swimming race. And it's a weird feeling.
Yeah. 100%.
And it was not long, like it wasn't too far down the line that I was standing on the podium at the World Champs and they're playing the national anthem. And I'm now the fastest guy in the world. At that point, the fastest guy in history.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, now there's, and it I don't think it will ever sink in.
Yeah.
Because it's too, I don't know, you just feel like a normal person and you've achieved this thing and you're like, there's no person in history that could have ever beat me in a swimming race. And it will never sink in. But I thought at that time I had a real specific flashback to Wet and Wild when I was 16. There's no 16-year-old boy to like 4 years later going, there's no one in the world.
That is wild, bro.
Weird.
It's wild.
Weird.
And yet, because I guess for hundreds of thousands of years we were just like people in like little villages and everything. So we still got like our primal brain or whatever. So it's so hard for us to wrap our head around such a big number of possibilities kind of thing.
Yeah. It's really weird. And it's one of those things, the blessing and the curse about the events that I did in swimming was like they're over in, split second, they're super high pressure, super high stakes, but also like when you win, you can say you're the fastest.
Yeah, for sure.
And that was always my thing. Like, 200 freestyle's nice, other strokes are nice, it's all nice. But when you're the fastest in the world, you're like the fastest in the world.
Yeah.
It's nice.
It's why the 100 meters sprint is the most watched.
That's right.
It's the fastest in the world.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything specifically about the race with your first national win? Was there a certain tactic that you used or?
Ooh, I think I'd come through and I never had a race plan.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so the first time I ever used a race plan was when I moved to Sydney when I was 18 and got a coach, like a professional coach and stuff. And he's like, all right, we're going to plan out how you race. Back then I was diving in, I was breathing when I needed to. I was like accelerating and decelerating when I felt I needed to. Like it was so cowboy. So I was basically just going off like grit and determination really.
And talent really.
Yeah, when a lot of these other kids were already from the city. Probably of that, say 10 in the final, say 2 maybe went from Sydney or Brisbane or Melbourne clubs.
And they'd be in systems by then.
They'd be in systems, They'd be training at Homebush. They'd have sports scientists, all that jazz. And so they knew what they were doing. And I was out there just winging it. So the race itself, I remember being like super nervous. Again, similar to athletics, when you know it's starting on a gun, I don't know what about that, but like it gets you going. Yeah. You know what I mean? When you know it's like, and one mistake, it's over.
Yeah.
There's not many more not many things that are more nerve-wracking. I reckon the only thing that would be more nerve-wracking would be walking out for a fight.
Yeah,
I reckon that's
got to be the pinnacle.
That's the pinnacle. Yeah. Like I used to get so nervous watching Conor McGregor walk out for his fights. I'd be sitting there with butterflies in my stomach, just like, how is he doing that?
Yep.
The pressure.
Oh, that he's lumped on himself.
When he walked out for that Khabib fight, I was like shitting myself, and I'm not even fighting. I'm a Conor McGregor fan, but I wouldn't say I'm like an absolute diehard. Like I've frothed on the come up.
I'm a fan of the come up. The Conor McGregor of today is
cooked.
He's cooked.
He's cooked.
And look, when you get 100 milli given to you, it'll cook most people. I think.
Yeah. But I mean, I can empathise with him a tiny bit in that I know what it's like to perform on your own in front of a huge crowd.
Yeah.
But also to have a guy locked in a cage with you who wants to kill you, who is the best fighter in the world. Yeah. It's like the stakes are so high.
Far out.
And he increases it
a million. Especially that fight. The things that he said before the fight were wild.
Really etched things about culture and religion and yeah.
Oh mate, that was wild actually.
Yeah, so that's one of the few things about big races in swimming is the nerves are thick and fast. Like there's a lot happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you always, this is something like, I think with athletics and swimming, you'd always rock up to a meet and there'd always be this like new guy that's going to beat you. This, such and such. His times are fucking this crazy time. Yeah. And it's like every time you're like, bro, this is every year. There's apparently this new gun that's going to, did you experience that?
Yeah, always. Or like and swimming's a funny one because you're in Speedos, you're in swimwear. That people are like, did you see the guy from Brisbane this year? Like he shaves his chest before the finals. Like he rocks up to the heats with a hairy chest, then he shaves it, and they're like, holy shit, the guy with the hairy chest, like he's a beast. It's actually a really awkward thing as a swimmer. Like you go through puberty, and puberty, hits you pretty hard. And
I'm still waiting. I'm still fucking waiting. No hair on my chest.
And you're out there bearing it all in a pair of Speedos.
Oh, mate, 100%.
Like you go through your full range of development day in, day out in your Speedos in a squad full of girls as well.
Yeah.
Like it's not a guys squad.
Yeah.
So you're going through these awkward phases in Speedos in a pool with girls in swimwear. Like it's such a
oh man, that's
what an awkward time as a teenager.
Recipe for disaster.
Disaster.
Okay, so it was always funny, like, and there would be certain people, because you know how you get to know certain people, like they come second or third or fourth, and they're always there. And there's certain people that are intentionally talking shit to get you out, psych you out, and all that kind of thing.
Right up to the thing I always found super amusing, right up until the day I retired, is you get a bit of, I guess you call it locker room talk, but it's like talk around the warm-up pool. So when you're at the Olympics, you see the big pool, the stadium. Then out the back of the pool, there's another pool, or maybe two more pools, where you warm up. And the physio's there, the masseuses, you got like team rooms, all that sort of stuff. So there's always chatter around the pool deck, we call it. And you'd see someone from America that you haven't seen in a few years or whatever, and you go, but mate, how you been? Yeah, good. How's training? Well, actually, now you ask. So I was doing this set, and I was doing like repeat 100s on a minute time, like and they tell you all this stuff they did in training. Yeah. And from the time I was 16 to the time I retired, there was always people telling me what they did in training. Like, oh mate, I did this in training, I did that in training. Like, what have you been doing? And when they'd say that to me, like the times were always bullshit, and I'd be like, 100%. I couldn't hold that time. Yeah. Right up to the time I was a professional swimmer, I couldn't do that. Yeah. And they're like, oh mate, well I was doing that in training. I'm like, yeah, sweet. Well, let's race.
Who wins the race? That's so true.
So that's the biggest chat, was always like bullshit training stories, or like so and so benched this, so and so did a weighted chin up with this. It was always bullshit training stories.
Fucking hell.
And I was never big on the training stories, and even in swimming, I don't know about footy, but probably the same in running. You got trainers and you got racers, and sometimes you get beast trainers who just don't race well for whatever reason. I don't know if that would translate to footy. Maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Like guys that are beasts on the training paddock or weights room or fitness. Yeah. And for whatever reason, it just doesn't translate. Yeah. And it happens heaps in swimming. And people would always be telling you, like, that's the smack talk. Like, oh, I did this in training, did these times. Like,
Mate, it's honestly, and it's just bizarre that at such a young age, they're already like trying to manipulate the situation and make you rattled and that. Whenever I got involved, like I never got involved. I was just like, man, fucking relax, bro. Like, okay, so 2010 is that so how old were you in 2010?
18. So I finished school end of 2009. Did the Schoolies thing, then moved to Sydney to swim. Yeah. And that's when I made the decision, like I'm gonna chase after this dream. Yep.
How was the Schoolies thing?
Yeah, good. I wish I did Schoolies as a professional swimmer.
You were I was the same, just a little dweeb doing his best.
Yeah. I mean, it was an eye opener because I'd come from Port Macquarie where there was like 10 girls to choose from and you knew all of them, and then you get to the Gold Coast, you're like, wowza, there's a world out there.
Oh, yeah.
But it was a couple of years, it might have been London Olympics. One of the boys in our relay team had just turned 18, And he was coming back to Australia after the Olympics to go to Schoolies.
Stop.
And I was like, mate.
Game over. Game over.
You walk around the beach at Schoolies with the Olympic rings tattoo.
Oh, my God.
Like, forget about it.
Fit as a fiddle.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking to each other. Oh, there's such and such. Like, come on.
Jacked, tan, just come back from the Olympics, got the rings tattooed.
Yeah.
Like, game over. So I used to joke about it because it happened. Like, I made the Australian team probably 3 months after Schoolies.
Yeah.
Oh,
no
if I could just wind back time.
100%.
That Schoolies week would have been a lot more successful.
Oh, far out. You're absolutely right. And you look back on like how like nervous you were around women and like no confidence whatsoever.
Hopeless. Hopeless.
So 2010 though, you make the Australian swimming. You go to the Australian swimming championship.
Yeah.
And you come third in the 100 meter freestyle.
Yeah.
And then you qualify for the national side.
Yeah.
So you would have been 18 at this stage?
Yeah, 18 when I qualified, and
Yep.
by the time we went away to Com Games, I was 19.
Yep, okay.
And I came through in an era where it was almost a bit of a changeover period. So like the older people on the team were like Steph Rice, Eamon Sullivan, Libby Trickett, Liesl Jones, Jeff Hugel. They're all finishing their careers.
Yeah.
But they're all still there. So
Okay.
like most of the people on the team were sort of late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
And then like I sneak in as an 18-year-old from Port Macquarie.
Yep.
Did not know anybody.
Yeah.
Did not know a person. Like the only time I'd met Eamon was on the podium when we got our medals to get
way.
selected for the Australian team. So I'm like traveling away with the Australian
Country
team.
kid, like eyes wide
Just
open.
shitting myself.
Yeah.
Shitting myself. And that was like, this is peak hazing era.
Can't do it as much anymore, but it still existed back then.
Yeah, peak hazing. And so all the old boys that are like, they've been, some of those guys are like Jeff Hugels and your Ash Callises and stuff are still hanging around from the Sydney Olympics at this stage.
Wow.
And I'm coming into that team. So yeah, super daunting.
So, I mean, what can you tell us in regards to the hazing?
One of the stories, I've told this on SEN, so it's probably play on.
Okay.
So we go to training in the morning, and the older boys on the team are like, come to the reception of the hotel. We're staying in San Diego before we go to somewhere near LA to race the Pan Pacific Championships. My first team, super nervous. The older boys say, come to the reception of the hotel and bring your passport. Like, yep, sweet. And they're like, wear normal clothes, no team gear. I'm like, yep, okay. Barely took any normal clothes with me because I was an absolute kook and didn't know what to take with me. Like we rock up to the airport to go on the plane to LA, and I'm wearing my full Australian team tracksuit, and they're all wearing like plain clothes.
Oh,
and I was just
my God, bro.
But no one told me.
Yeah.
And like,
As a
I didn't
young
know
fella,
what to do.
you would've been rattled.
In bright yellow tracksuit on the plane.
No.
And you know, in hindsight now, you know, like full kit wanker.
Yeah.
But I was like, they send out your team gear and
Yeah.
you got shitloads of gear. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, well, you must have to wear this everywhere. So I think when we went to America, I might have taken like one spare pair of clothes.
Yeah.
The boys are like, normal clothes, meet in the lobby, bring your passport. I'm like, yep, sweet.
That's worrying. Bring your passport. It's like, oh shit.
But I'm like, the boys are accepting me here. Like, this is good. This is the first time they've really spoken to me.
Yep.
I think I might be in here. So I get to reception. All the boys are a bit sheepish. We get in some cars and we just start driving out of San Diego. We're driving for quite a long time, and all of a sudden we hit like heavy traffic. I'm like, yo, what's going on here? They're like, oh, this is the border for Mexico. I'm like, all right. And I'm like, oh shit. They've brought me to Mexico. Like, what's doing here?
Yeah.
So we line up for ages, get through customs, get into Mexico. We're straight into Tijuana, which is just like degenerate city. Like it is. And it's slums and it's like just debauchery.
Yeah.
Debauchery. Anyway, the older boys take me to like the closest strip club, whatever it was. And they used to call me fighter pilot at the time because I had big goggles. And so they're like, fighter pilot, we're going to get you a dance at this strip club. And I'm like, oh no. And keep in mind, this is probably about 11 a.m. in the morning. So it's bright sunlight.
Oh, yuck.
And I'm dead sober. Everyone's sober.
Oh my God.
Take me into this strip club. They're like, fighter pilot's getting a a strip tease, and I'm like, oh, and they like pick a girl out, and the girl takes me off into a room, and it's just me and her.
Oh man!
And I haven't experienced a lot in life at this point. So she and this is like 11 a.m. on a weekday. It wasn't exactly their A-team working the floor. Like it wasn't good.
Let's just say it's racist.
It wasn't good. Yeah, not good. So she starts dancing and stuff, and I'm just looking anywhere I can but in her eyes. I'm like, do not want to be there. Like, just praying, like, please let this end. Like, just let this end and let me get out of there.
Yeah.
And she does the full thing, like strips down, does the whole thing, and it finishes. Like, she's trying to speak to me during it in Spanish or whatever, and I'm just ignoring everything she says and like not looking at her at all. Just like, get me out of there. Anyway, we leave. And the other boys are out in the street or whatever. I walk out in the street, and they're like not even really interested in me. It's like I'm just there. I'm a hassle. They probably don't even remember that they've sent me in there.
Yeah.
And then one of the older boys that I particularly looked up to and listened to said, "What's that on your leg? Fighter pilot." And I was like, "What?" And I had these light jean shorts, and I've got this big wet patch on my leg. And he goes, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, I think that's where she was like grinding on my leg." And he's like, "Mate, that's crook." He's like, "You've got an STI from that." And he just walked off. And I just go, "Oh." I was like, "I've got an STI." And I was like, "Oh, my first Australian team, I've got an STI. My performance is going to be like wrecked. Like, what do I do here?" So, and the rest of the day, I can't even remember what we did, just kicking around Tijuana. I don't know what those degenerates were doing. Yeah. But I'm just stressed all day. I'm like, STI, all day, STI. I'm just panicking. Anyway, by the end of the day, we get back in the cars, get back across the border. Like, I'm super quiet all day. Get back to the team hotel, put my Shane gear back on, and go to dinner. I'm at dinner, and I walk over quietly to the doctor. So we got a big support staff around us, like physio, sports scientists, doctors, all of it. I walk over to the doctor and I say, "Oh, doc, I need to see you later on." He's like, "Yeah, what's up?" And I said, "Oh, I can't talk about it here. Can I meet you somewhere private?" Yeah. He's like, "Yeah, righto, mate. Like, come and meet me in my room after dinner." I'm like, "Yep, sweet." Got his room number. Finished dinner, just still so stressed. Go to see the doctor. Doctor's like, "Mate, what's up? What is it?" And I go, "Oh, it's kind of awkward, but I've got an STI." And he goes, "What do you mean you got an STI?" I said, "Oh, mate, I've caught an STI today." And he goes, "What were you doing?" I said, "Well, I was down in Mexico at this strip club." And he goes, "You're what?" I said, "Yeah, I was down in Mexico at this strip club. I got a private dance and stuff, and I've ended up with an STI." And he said, "Mate, you were having sex with strippers in Mexico?" I said, No, I didn't have sex with her. Yeah. And he goes, "Well, how'd you get the STI?" And I said, "Oh, she was grinding on my leg, and I ended up with this wet patch, and I've caught this STI." And he goes, "Mate, you can't catch an STI from that." I was like, "Are you serious?" He goes, You're sweet. Don't worry about it." He goes, Who are you in Mexico with?" And I didn't want to snitch on the boys. So I was like, "Oh, look, I just ducked down like on tour and stuff." He's like, "Oh, righto, mate. Yeah, go back to your room."
We're thinking this guy's a rogue.
This 18-year-old kid from Port Macquarie is across the border in Tijuana getting strip teasers. Like, it was so rogue. And
on a Monday morning.
I wonder, like, there's doctor-patient privilege, I guess, but surely he's saying to the coaches, like, "Fucking keep an eye out on fighter pilot. Like, this guy's running off to Tijuana in the middle of the day. Like, someone keep an eye on this guy."
Holy shit. Surely he put 2 and 2 together and the boys took him down.
You'd think so. But I don't even know if those old boys would even remember that. But that was one part of my hazing that I can tell.
One part.
One part. And again, because I was, one of the only younger ones, particularly because I was in the 100 freestyle, it's like, we've got to, knock this guy down a peg. And so I copped a pretty big hazing that year. But I was so stoked about the hazing because I was like, I'm one of the boys.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
And that was all I wanted, was to be accepted and feel like one of the boys. Yeah. And so I was like pumped, even though it was the most stressful day. And I don't know, I mustn't have listened in PE class or whatever, because looking back on it now, I'm like, why did you think you got an STI from a chick grinding on your leg?
Yeah, was it the first time you'd been overseas?
Yeah.
Like as into like America or
Yeah.
something?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I hadn't been out to Port Macquarie that much. Like we used to come to Sydney for state or nationals or whatever, but spend 360 days a year in Port Macquarie.
Like I can see how you could think that, like, you know.
Well, and the guy that said it was like the guy.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, if he's saying it.
Maybe there's some kind of STI you can get like that. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? That I don't know about.
And the way he said it was like, mate, that's crook. He's like, you got an STI, and then just walked off. And I was like, that's crook.
That's crook. Bro, you sent me in there. That's crook. Oh, that's great.
It's good stuff, bro.
But
like, imagine if you did that these days. Like, forget about it,
mate.
Forget about it. Yeah.
It'd be one of the biggest stories in the bloody.
Oh,
everyone's getting sacked.
Yeah.
It is an interesting thing because, like, I understand the argument of like, oh, you know, young, you know, men especially, like, they can be vulnerable. I get that for sure, and we want to make sure they feel comfortable, everything.
Yeah.
But I do think there is something to be said for young men and women that are joining a new group of experienced people.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't have to be extreme, but a bit of roughhousing or banter or something like that. Again, whether it's man or a woman, and women do it too in regards to bringing them. Bringing young women through into their, I think it's like, it's just a weird balance that we have to hit. Again, I understand the argument of like, we have to make them feel comfortable, for sure. No one's saying that that's okay.
Yeah.
But I do believe there is some merit in like testing a younger person and say, are you worthy of our respect?
Yeah. And swimming's this really awkward thing where half of the people on the team are your competitors. Like literally, you have the same goal. It's not a shared goal.
Yeah.
You want to beat that person, or like you're getting sponsored by this person and she's pissed off because you're sponsored by them, or like there's just conflicts of interest left, right and center. So if you can have some kind of shared experience away from the swimming pool, then it just brings you that bit closer. Without a shared experience or a shared goal or a sense of belonging, the swim team, and it's happened at different points over the year, it's just this fractured, like, everyone's there for their own good. No one's getting along. People bitching about each other.
Yeah.
So that shared experience for me made me feel closer to those guys. Probably didn't work in the other way, but it didn't have to because they already belonged. They were already the big dogs in the team. All I wanted to do was feel like I was part of the team.
Yeah.
And so that experience for me was like, oh, the boys like me.
Yeah. It's you're 100% right. And like, I went through plenty of like banter and, you know, certain things being done to me when I was coming through the grade. But when the moment came where they said like, mate, we respect you and everything, like it was awesome because I was like, fuck yeah, like I've earned my stripes. I've earned my stripes with these boys.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2010, you go to the Pan Packs, then the Commonwealth Games. You win gold in the relay. Now, I understand individual medals are probably what is it all there for.
Yeah.
How much do you use froth the relay? Is it a big deal to use or is it more a bit of fun?
Probably depends on where you are in your career and also what importance the team as a whole places on it. So there were years where we'd go away on relay camps and set goals around getting relay golds and things like that, and you'd be fully invested and bought in. And there was years where they wouldn't even talk about it. And so the relay would be like a sideshow. But for me as a young guy coming up, getting a gold in that relay, one of my first memories of swimming was the Sydney Olympics when the Australians won gold and they did the air guitar and all that stuff. So that was, relays always held a special part in my heart. But from the moment I won that gold medal in the relay, I was straight away thinking like, how do I take that next step and do this on my own?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you're right. It just really depends on what does the team, because you at the end of the day, you're individual athletes. Like, that's what you do each day. To succeed.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like there is something really, I guess, joyous about winning with your mates.
Yeah.
And being able to celebrate it with them rather than them looking at you going, "Oh, you beat me," to get that kind of thing.
It's this weird double-edged sword, and people might find this take on it a little bit interesting. But the only way you can contribute to a relay in swimming is to swim your own best race. You can't jump in and fight the Russian in lane 5 next to you, right?
Yeah.
The only thing you can do is swim that same 100 meters that I swim every time on my own or in a relay team or whatever it is. That's the only way I can contribute, is swim my own best race. Some people say I do these amazing swims in relays, or, you know, I'm a relay swimmer. I swim so much better in relays because I take it to another level. It's not possible. There is no other level where, like, I'm giving 100% exertion in my own individual race, and then, oops, there's another 5%. If I'm giving 100%, that is 100%. What
100%.
happens in relays is, all right, I'm used to walking out there in front of 20,000 people. All eyes are on me. All pressure on me. I'm carrying the weight of a country on my back.
Yeah.
I step out there with the relay team. I got 3 other guys. I share the burden. And if I lose or if I don't get the result, the spotlight might not be on me individually.
Yeah.
So I think when people say I'm a great relay swimmer or I swim better in relays, it's actually I reach my full potential in a relay because I can't handle that pressure as an individual athlete. Controversial opinion, and people don't like to hear that, but that's the way I think when I hear I'm a relay swimmer or I swim better in relays. It's like I handle the pressure better when it's shared amongst 4 athletes.
Yeah, because it's not like, is there, you know, you all dive, everything is exactly the same, isn't it? In regards to, like, you all dive in just like you would dive in in a normal race. The water's obviously the same. The amount of races is the same. Yeah. So, you're right. Really, the only difference is the pressure. Yeah. That's really the only difference.
Yeah. And you have a sense of camaraderie, but that doesn't bring out an extra percentage of exertion. If you're literally giving 100%, and in a sport that's so cut and dry, same as athletics, right? When you're at full exertion running, there isn't another. You're at full exertion.
Yeah. Or the only other answer is you're not trying your hardest when you're by yourself.
You've tightened up under pressure and you're not doing your best.
Okay, so 2010 happens, but then 2011 rolls around, and like this, I'm assuming is arguably one of the best years of your life.
Yeah.
You win
many reasons.
So you win 2 golds, a silver. I guess walk us through the year, bro. Walk us through the year.
Yeah, so went into that year coming off the Com Games and decided, like, suddenly the goalposts shift from I want to swim on the Australian team to, like, I want to be a contributor. I want to start winning things. And just the focus in training shifted from, like, you know, how do we get the best out of you to what's world's best practice? What are the best guys in the world doing it? Strength and conditioning, sports science, diet, all that stuff. The focus just shifted a bit. I think I matured a bit as an athlete. I'd been exposed to international racing. I knew now what it took. And I kind of backed myself to take it to that next level. The really nice thing about the start of that year and the World Championships was that I was living my life in anonymity. Could walk down the street, no one knew who I was, no pressure, no expectation. Could go out on a Saturday night and just be a normal 19-year-old kid with no repercussion ever. Yeah. Wasn't anyone's role model, wasn't anyone's hero, wasn't just normal life, which is, until that's taken away from you, you don't realise how nice that is. And then things change and you go, oh, that was pretty cool when I could do my own thing.
Well, that's a good thing about, like, if you go to Europe or whatever, like, no one really knows you there. You're just cruising around doing whatever you want.
Yeah, but for swimming, it doesn't work like that.
That's true. Good point. That's a good point. Well, if you go to South America or something.
If you go to Africa.
If you go across the border to Tijuana, no one knows who you are.
Tijuana, anonymity. So going into that World Champs, I think I was ranked 8th in the world, but was training well, feeling confident. And there was all these, like, real weird statistics. Like, Australia's been successful at Olympics and World Champs and stuff, but never really in the 100 freestyle. We've always been 1500 free, 400 free distance events. And 100 freestyle is like the blue ribbon event, but we've never, for whatever reason. You had to go back, I think, to like the 50s or something. Mike Wendon, or 60s, won an Olympic. So we'd never won a gold medal at World Champs in 100 freestyle. Never, as Australians. Like, how weird is that?
That is weird when we're so dominant.
So dominant. So we're going into this, and I'm an underdog. Go over to China. I lead off the first leg of the relay. And it's my first ever time racing Michael Phelps. So I'm leading off first leg of the relay in the lanes, like 2 lanes down from me. We have Michael Phelps. Elaine Bernard, who was like the guy that beat Eamon Sullivan in the Beijing Olympics. I think Cesar Cielo, who was a world record holder. All these big guys in the race against me, and I'm leading off. And in the marshalling area, so you're in a marshalling area, say 10 metres by 10 metres, and they've got 4 chairs, one behind the other, and you line up 1 to 4 in your relay team. So I'm sitting at the front. I think behind me was like Eamon Sullivan or something. We've got 4 guys in a line. And this is my first big meet, first time I'm leading off the relay team. So it's like, it's big time now, world title, world champs. And the Russian team must have thought they could get under our skin a bit or something. Yeah. So the Russian team gets up from their seats, they come over and they stand in front of me and start speaking in Russian, like staunching me basically. What the And hell? I'm like, and I've never been, I've been in the Commonwealth Games, but they're like the friendly games. Yeah, okay. This is the world champs now, like there's, all bets are off. It's serious, it's professional.
It's it's like the world champs doesn't have the added aura of Olympics or Com Games where like we're coming together for the greater good kind of thing.
No. And it's almost like more cutthroat, more professional, probably more money on the line in terms of bonuses and stuff like that. Okay. There's always more world records broken at world champs. It's better conditions. You're staying in 5-star hotels, you got buses, everything's nice. Yeah. Olympics, like everything's a bit scat, but world champs, everything's nice. Yeah. And the Russians start getting up in my grill. And I've come from the rugby league background, so I'm like, giddy up. This must be what happens in a marshalling area. Yeah. So I'm up out of my seat, I'm like, fuck you. And like start staunching up. And I'm like, let's go. Like this is it.
Like as you said, rugby league background, if you let him put one over you, you're lost.
Yeah. No, it doesn't happen in rugby league. So I'm up and I'm like into it. And the other guy, one of the other guys on the Australian team, Matt Target, came up next to me. He's like got my back. And then Eamon, who was like the older statesman in the team and probably the calm head, comes in and he's like settles it down. Yeah. Mate, stick to your own process, stay in your own lane, blah, blah, blah. Like, yep, sweet, settle myself down, get back out there, and we walk onto the pool deck, and I hear this big slap, and Michael Phelps is like renowned for he can swing his arms and clap them together behind his back. And before every race, he does a clap behind his back and does this big like, ooh, like sound when he's on the block.
Like so just before, ape or something.
Yeah, just before they say take your marks, you hear this big like, ooh.
No way.
And you're like, that's his thing to say like, I'm Michael Phelps and I'm in your race.
Yeah, okay.
And so again, that's a fork there, right? It's like, oh my God, Michael Phelps, or like, let's fucking go. Yeah. And I'm already in the mindset of like, let's fucking go because you G'd me earlier. Yeah. And now I'm double G'd. Yeah. And so I just swam the race of my life. I smashed Michael Phelps by like almost a second. Beat everybody in that lead off leg, gave us like a body length lead in the relay, and then the boys hold on and we win the gold.
Yeah, wow.
And everyone's going nuts. And there's this footage after the race of where we're like doing this like flex type thing and screaming. Yeah. And it looks like we're doing it to the crowd, but actually we were standing and doing it at the Russians who are in the lane next to us. We're like, at the Russians.
That's sick.
Because they staunched us and then we pumped them.
Yeah.
And that was a huge thing back in Australia. So that's night one, win the relay. Like first gold medal we'd won in a relay for the men since, not including Com Games, because again, friendly games. Yep. First gold medal in a big relay since the Sydney Olympics. Wow. So it's been 11 years that we've been trying to emulate that.
Yep.
And we do it. We beat Phelps in America. We beat the Russians. We beat the French. We beat the Brazilians. And so that was a huge moment that night. And I always kind of think like my world champs is like, it's made. Like that's a successful week, regardless of what happens. But the time I swim in that is the time I swim in that lead off is like the quickest time in history.
Far out.
So all of a sudden back here in Australia, people start going nuts. Like we've got this new guy.
Yeah.
But I'm over in China, so I don't know about it.
Okay.
I know nothing about it. I'm going about my normal week. My mum and my brother were there in the crowd, but you don't really see them.
Yeah.
Going about my normal week. Progresses through the 100 freestyle final. And none of the swimming was being broadcast here back in Australia. But Channel 10 had the rights. And so they say, we're going to cut normal programming at 8 p.m. or whatever it is tonight. We're going to show the men's 100 freestyle. We've got this new guy.
Yep.
We're going to only show that race for the whole week.
Wow.
because this is the next guy. And I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
But if had I known, it's a shitload of pressure, but I didn't know.
Like a massive pressure. They're cutting their usual shows just for this rookie that's coming through.
Yeah. And so I swim the race, and it was the perfect race. Like, my whole race plan was go out easy, the first sort of 30, 40 meters, accelerate into the turn, and then pump everyone on the way home. Like, turn on the heat on the way home, and back my fitness that I'd be fitter and people would start to drop off.
Yeah.
15 meters to go, it's like pretty even, and then like I've like absolutely pedaled to the metal. People start dropping away, and I can see across the pool the world record holder's like 2 lanes across. He's the last one to drop, and I drop him, and I know with probably 5-10 meters to go I've won. Like, I've won a world title, and you're just on top of the world. And on the commentary back here in Australia, they say something to the effect of like, here comes the missile, he's superseded torpedo.
No way.
The missile is here, or something like that.
Out.
And from that moment on, for the rest of my career and now life after, I've been called the Missile, which is like a pretty lucky nickname
100%.
in the scheme of things.
Yeah.
But that was like, you could have taken a 5-second chunk of my life, that last 10 meters of that race, and my life went from one thing to the other in the space of 5 seconds.
That's wild.
Came home from China like a week later, got off the plane at like 5 a.m. in the morning, walk up the the causeway, come out at the airport, and there's like cameras, flashing lights, news reporters with like mics in my face.
Yep.
And that was just the distinct like before and after, and that was like my life would never be the same after that race.
Crazy. And you're the first ever Australian to win a 100 meter.
Yeah.
And did you break the record in that race or
So I was the record that I broke was like, so they brought in those crazy suits, and then they banned them.
Yeah, okay.
So the moment they banned them, the times went way back down, but my time was the fastest ever without the super suit.
Oh, that's so annoying. They should get rid of those records with the suits.
Only this year, the end of 2022, that time first got broken. And this is 2011 when I was going that speed. So it took 11 years to catch up to where I was.
In 2011.
Back in 2011. So it was like, it was a huge thing. And I think Australia went nuts for it because suddenly, like, we'd never had a guy in this event before. We've always been talking about Thorpe and Hackett and like... They're huge stars, but there's something different about watching 1500 freestyle on TV and watching 100 freestyle.
Mate, 100%.
And it's a funny thing at that time. So like anybody that knows me away from sport and media and all that stuff, I'm almost, I wouldn't say full introvert, but I'm pretty introverted. I'm pretty quiet. I have a pretty small group of friends. And even like family settings and stuff, like I'm very quiet.
Yep.
And somehow in the whole thing of the missile and like in the excitement of winning the race, I sat up on the lane ropes and flexed, and like it's part of the bravado of that event. It's like, somehow in the whole fallout from that is like, I became seen as like this like super confident, like alpha male, like beast, like, and
it kind of goes hand in hand with the event too, because it's just got that thing about it, that 100 meters kind of thing.
And like it's same as the running, right? They're the swaggy guys. I had to like try and put on a bit of an act when I was racing to be that swaggy guy, because I was like, if I'm not the guy, then I'm not going to win in the pool. So I got to be that guy. But that's when it probably like leaked in a little bit to my life away from the pool. And it's super hard as a young kid, just turned 20, and like every time you open a newspaper, it's like talking about, yourself and how good you are, and then like all the social magazines, and that's the thing that swimming probably transcends, that's a bit different, is like everything I did was in like Women's Day, New Idea, the Missile's single,
like full mainstream.
What's the Missile's love life like? Missile spotted at a beach with a girl in a yellow bikini. Like all this weird stuff that was not just swimming related. It was like everyone wanted to know about every single part of my life. And and so it's probably one of the few things that's different between swimming and rugby league, in that it transcends sport for whatever reason, and it transcends states. So it's Australia-wide.
Yeah.
You go to Perth, you can't go anywhere. You go to Melbourne, you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
By that stage, if I went to Europe, America, South America, Asia, you're getting noticed and you're getting hassled everywhere you go.
Yeah, wow. It's you're totally right in regards to you transcend, like, there's this rugby league bubble and it's massive in the sense of, like, you know, let's say 4 million people watch the grand final or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is a bubble. It's a bubble of rugby league.
Yeah.
Whereas when you take that step out into mainstream, it's just a different beast, bro. I mean, I'd assume, obviously I don't fucking know. But
And I don't know why swimming has always been like that, but the general public, for whatever reason, has always been interested in the social lives of swimmers, I think.
Yeah.
Even right down to now, like, is Emma McKeon dating Cody Simpson? You know, it's very tabloidy.
Yeah.
But it's always been there for our biggest swimming. Who's Steph Rice dating? You know, the love life of, you know, it's always been very tabloidy.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
It's probably the unisex nature of the sport.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And yeah, I mean, it's always been a big thing. And it was gone by the time I came through, but remember they used to always have the Clio Bachelor of the Year.
Yeah.
And it was always like swimming guys.
Yeah,
it was always like Jeff Hugel, Michael Klim, like.
I'd love to know why. There's something about.
I don't know.
Because, like, really, when you look at, like, running, I mean, maybe we don't do as well in running. That's probably why. You know what it is? It's probably because it's probably one of the individual sports where we dominate worldwide. I'm trying to think of any other individual sport that we really dominate worldwide.
Yeah, it's probably the only real one.
Yeah, so maybe that's the reason. And so do you, like, I see it all the time, and I'll be the first to admit too, when, you know, I started playing first grade, look, did I turn into some kind of monster? Absolutely not. Like, I was still, you know, there were still way worse blokes than me, but it definitely does get to your head. Like, it definitely gets to your head. You're a young man with, you know, you're not on millions, but you're on decent enough coin, much better than, you know, what you would probably be on if you went out of school normally.
Yeah.
Did you find that you, in the moment, you don't think there's anything different? It's not until later when you look back and you go, fuck, maybe I did. You know, was it like that for you or no?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was hard not to get caught up in all the excitement. And I had this stretch of, like, I was winning all the races. I was doing, like, heaps of, like, TV commercials. Like, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
Papers, TV, and I'd never had a bad story written about me ever.
Yeah.
So I'm, like, super open with the media. When I get interviewed and they're like, you know, what are you expecting from this race? I'd say I'm expecting to win. And it's such a fine line that you tread between arrogance and confidence, particularly in events that are very finite in time, where you have to believe in yourself to win those events.
And individual as well.
Yeah. And I've always said when I'm coaching younger kids and stuff, I never won a race that I didn't believe I could win. I had to convince myself through whatever process necessary that I was about to win whatever race I went into.
Yeah.
So I was so sure that I was going to win that race. So and it's probably a balancing act of, like, okay, I have to believe that internally. I have to try and, you know, walk the walk around training and around my inner circle. But as soon as I step out in front of the media, I have to, like, switch up to, like, oh, you know, I'm not sure how I'm going to go. I'm just happy to be, like, I hate that stuff as well. And I think it's probably a part of the reason that swimming has lost a lot of its, I don't know, allure, is that it's very boring now. Whenever you watch a swimming interview, guys are like, I'm just happy to be here, just happy to represent my country. No expectations, nothing like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the thing that people liked about me, and part of the thing that they also disliked about me was that I'd do an interview and they say, well, you know, what are your hopes and, you know, what do you expect from this race? I say, I expect to win. And it's kind of exciting. It's kind of like the Conor McGregor thing where you're like, oh, yeah, well, now you better win.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's also like, so it raises the stakes. It makes people watch. But if you don't win, then, you know, people call you a dickhead.
Yeah.
And I had both moments in my career. There was races where I said I'd win and I'd win.
Yeah.
And there was a race where I said I'd win and I didn't win.
And they always remember that race. They remember it forever. They don't remember all the ones that you did win.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, look, you're totally right, because like there is not a single athlete, team sport, individual otherwise, who doesn't feel they can win.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? What are you doing if you don't think you can win?
Yeah, and it's, again, it's probably mostly naivety in that I didn't quite know how to handle the media and how to play that game.
Yeah.
But there's no training. They didn't sit me down after I won a world title in China and say, okay, this is what people are going to say about you. This is what to expect. This is how to be a role model. That was one of the things I always struggled with, is people like, oh, why are you saying this? Why are you doing that when you're a role model? I'm like, where was the role model 101 course? Like, what should I be doing? What shouldn't I be doing?
Yeah.
And
because like in your head, you're an athlete.
Yeah.
You didn't grow up going, I'm an athlete, but I'm also training to be a role model.
Correct.
You're training to be just an athlete.
Correct. Yeah. And what does being a role model involve? How does a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old be a role model to an 18-year-old? Like, don't even know my own place in the world.
Like, I get it if you were 28, 29, you could start saying, listen, mate, you're a mature adult now. You understand even if you don't want to be a role model, you are a role model.
Yeah.
But expecting these 19, 20, 21-year-olds, it's like, mate, you're looking at the wrong people for a model.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. And we went through this really weird phase in the swim team, like I said, of almost a changeover period where we only won 2 gold medals at that whole world champs. And that was me in the 100 freestyle and the 4x100 freestyle relay team that I was a part of.
Yep.
So we win 2 gold medals. We come back. We're heading into an Olympic year. We're predicted for 1 gold medal for the Olympics for the swim team. And that was me in the 100 freestyle.
Yep. Okay.
So all of a sudden, there's no shouldering of responsibility and pressure and expectation and everything like that. It's like, all right, this is our guy. Put him up on the pedestal.
Yep.
Every sponsor, every TV job, every radio segment, whatever it is, this is our guy. We use James, we use the Missile for everything. And he's the role model, he's the spokesperson, he's the leader of the team.
The country.
And going into that Olympics was another really weird time in Olympic history where they do these, the Olympic Committee comes out and does a medal prediction for the Olympic Games.
What?
Before the Olympics.
That's bizarre.
Why they do that, I have no idea.
What do they gain by doing that?
Nothing. Nothing to gain, everything to lose.
Other than looking like you could be corrupt. Like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it.
So they came out and did a medal prediction before the London Olympics and might have predicted like 2 or 3 golds in the whole Olympics. Like maybe like a couple of sailing or something or cycling. And then me in the swimming. So I've gone from the face of swimming to the face of the Olympic Games. So, and again, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Like I wouldn't change it for the world in that, like that set me up for the rest of my life, that period. The pressure came with the sponsors, came with the opportunities. So they balance each other out, right? Yeah. But it was just this perfect storm at this one point in time. Yeah. Like, had I gone to the Olympic Games now, you'd go, oh, there's Ariane Titmus, there's Kyle Chalmers, there's Emma McKeon. Like, they're all there. Like, James is one of many. Yeah. But it just was this perfect storm of like, we've only got this guy. Oh, by the way, his name's The Missile, which is kind of catchy.
And he's only been around, he's only won the first gold really last year in regards to like the top tier.
Yeah, first race I've ever won at an international level.
So it'll be less than 12 months after that, you've got the weight and expectation of a country.
Yeah. And the moment I got back, so and again, it's changed, but the build up to the Olympics end was almost a year long. This last Olympics, Tokyo felt like it crept up and it was done and it was like, oh shit, what just happened?
Yeah,
like,
it was
in
bizarre.
Tokyo. Yeah,
bizarre.
I don't know whose fault that is, but it is what it is. So this Olympics, it's like almost a year build up. So I get home from the world champs and straight away they're thinking like Olympics. Yeah. And so I've got this year build up of just madness, which was, again, a blessing and a curse. Like some of the greatest times of my life, some of the most pressure I've ever felt. Yeah. Some of the hardest times of my life in that, I could barely walk down the street. Yeah. it's a real weird time.
Yeah, bizarre. Like walking down the street in like, again, you're right in regards to like there's footy players and then and I think also there's a kind of a difference with footy players as well. Like, don't get me wrong, I can't speak for the Thurstons and the Smithies and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like with footy players, they're kind of like, because they are, even though you are a country bloke, but they're from the people, footy players. There's this knockabout kind of thing you can do with footy players.
Yeah.
Whereas swimmers with that Australian...
You're meant to be polished and...
It's exactly.
People wrote articles about me after London saying that I was like this typical spoilt private school kid from Sydney and stuff.
Oh my God.
And this is where like journalists do no research sometimes. There's no repercussions for what they write.
Yeah.
But that's just what they assumed because I was on the Australian swim team.
Crazy.
Like typical stuck-up Sydney private school boy.
And because of, it's funny, it's like that same people that like write those articles say like, don't judge a book by its cover and all that carry on. They're judging you because of the way you look and the fact that you're in the Australian swimming side.
Yeah.
Whereas you're a country bloke,
So weird. Yeah.
Okay, so we're in 2012 right now, is that correct?
Yep.
And this is did you say London Olympics?
London Olympics, yeah.
Okay, so you won a total of 2 medals, a silver and a bronze.
Yeah.
So the silver was in the 100 meters?
Yeah,
100 free?
bronze in the relay.
How did that, like it's weird, like you won a silver, so that's incredible.
Yeah.
But personally, what was that like for you?
Well, I think, look, I had absolutely no perspective on it at the time. So for me, the immediate feeling was failure. But the weirdest thing was the immediate feeling was embarrassment.
Yeah.
And
bizarre.
I can't exactly nail down why. I guess because of all that expectation and that pressure.
Yeah.
And again, like I certainly didn't help myself in the lead up to that. And sometimes like people will say to me like, you brought that on yourself and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I can accept that. But when a person wins a world title and you ask them what they want to do at the Olympics, generally they'll say win.
Yeah.
Unless they're being dishonest. And I was just always honest, probably to my own detriment. But it felt like a failure at the time. I felt embarrassed. It was by 1/100th of a second, which people always dwell on because it's such a small margin. But in a sport like swimming, it's not something I think about. Like I don't think, could I have done this or that to improve 1/100th? Because I gave everything on the day. Like I've never swum a race and like, I could have tried harder. Like what the fuck? Like I tried my hardest every time I got in the pool. Like I tried my hardest at everything in life. So... no regrets around anything like that. Just someone was 1/100th better on the day, which was still at the time like faster. It was only this past Tokyo Olympics when someone went faster than we did at that Olympics. Wow. Like the time I did in London would have won Rio, would have like won every other Olympics ever. So had a fast race, had someone better on the day, but felt really embarrassed about it. And copped a heap of backlash from it for a couple of reasons. So firstly, I get out of the pool and I think it was Gian Rooney or someone tried to interview me. And you're on pool deck, there's 20,000 people there. You've just had what you think is like the biggest failure in your life, and your head's spinning, the crowd's roaring, there's TV cameras everywhere. And Gian stopped me for an interview, like as you get out of the pool and you're walking off pool deck.
You're just processing what's happened.
Just processing. And I'm like, haven't had a chance to speak to coach, media manager, anyone. And I walk past her and don't do the interview straight away.
Yeah.
And
was that, or did you intentionally walk past her, or you just weren't thinking, you were caught up in the moment kind of thing?
Yeah, bit of both. Like I was aware that she was there, but I'm thinking like, this is extenuating circumstances. Like surely that she's not expecting me to speak on this now. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
Like, and I'm trying to process what's just happened. Like you literally touch the wall, crowd goes nuts, out of the pool, there she is. And I'm just like, I'm not this one.
Yeah.
And walk like 5 meters past.
Split second decision.
Walk like 5 meters past her. And I don't know what was said in coverage at that time. Then the media manager stops me. Like then I get to the media manager and he says, no, go back and speak to Gian. Yep, sweet. Go back and speak to Gian.
So you had someone that just could bring you back present to the moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Oh, you need to do that.
Yeah.
And that like focuses you back in.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay,
Yeah, and I haven't even thought like you got to go and get your clothes, you got to get your accreditation, you got to do a drug test. Like there's stuff happening that is kind of procedure. But it goes out the window a bit when you've just had this monumental moment in your life and you're trying to process it.
Yeah.
And you kind of just think like, surely she wouldn't be expecting me to say something right now.
Because you're so devastated.
Because I've just had this moment, and like there'll be Channel 9 cameras again further down. So you then go through this mix zone, which is like 100 meters long with the world media. Every journalist, TV station, everything. Yeah. But only the main TV rights allowed right on the pool deck, and that's where Channel 9 was. Yeah. So I was like, I'll get to them eventually. Yep. This first one, I just need I need a second. And that's literally all it was. Like, I've just got out of the water. I just need a second. So I walk past Jan, don't do the interview. Media manager stops me. I go back and I do the interview. And people went nuts for that. Like, how arrogant is this guy that he thinks he doesn't need to do the interview? Like, people went nuts for that. Nuts. And
when I hear stuff, people going nuts out. Like, have you ever wanted something so desperately in your life that if you don't get it, it feels like your world's ending?
Yeah. I felt like the world was closing in on me. Yeah. I was like, what just happened?
You like, never
that's
know.
Not what and I've convinced myself I'm going to win. So I'm like, that's not what was meant to happen. How do I process that? Like, how does this affect my life? What does my life look like now that I didn't achieve that?
It's crazy. You went back and did it anyway. It's just like, so for 30 seconds you were rattled. Yeah. Like, you're a human being.
Yeah. So they went nuts on that. A few stories were getting leaked at the time saying that like I thought I was bigger than the team and stuff. That was all just BS.
So it's funny how you're the golden boy going in.
Yeah.
You don't win. Yeah. Then narratives start to begin painted as if like almost that machine of, there's a negative story here. Yeah. Like we can create something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, you're the pin-up boy, which is awesome and everything we wanted. Yeah. You're the pin-up boy, which is everything we've always hated. It's like, wait, I'm still the same.
I lost by 1/100th of a second.
Yeah. And no swimmers won individual gold at that Olympics.
Yeah, wow.
So it wasn't like, well, I've let it down, but other people have helped us out. It's like, you're our only hope and you didn't do it, so it's your fault.
21?
Yeah, I would have turned 21 just before we went over. And so that was massive. And then the fallout from that Olympics, came back to Australia and had a tough time of it back in Australia. And then the Stillnox story breaks. Yep. Which is like the biggest story.
That was crazy.
Ever at the time.
I don't like follow swimming much at all. Obviously, when Australia's Olympics and that, I'll absolutely watch it. Yeah. But that story was so big, bro. Yeah. It was so fucking big.
Yeah, imagine if they knew the Mexico story.
You'll be, in a few weeks, you'll be in the same situation.
I should have just drip-fed the Mexico story to take the heat off for the Stillnox. Wait, you think this is bad? The Stillnox story was like so innocent and so, it's just the boring story. Yeah. And that became like the biggest thing ever, like the biggest. And again, part of the thing of being the pin-up boy and the face of it is no matter how little of a part I played in that night of the Stillnox night, like that's our guy. Yeah. That's the guy in the TV commercials. That's the guy on the front page of the paper. So who do we link the Stillnox thing with? The guy who's on the TV ads.
And so for the people listening that may have forgotten or whatever, walk us through basically what had happened.
So we're in Manchester before the Olympic Games. We're actually staying in the same hotel as the Dream Team, which was sick. So we're like riding in the elevator with LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, like talking to them about like life. Yeah, like, spin out.
That's fucking crazy.
And so we're in Manchester. I think we're in Manchester for 3 weeks, and this was what we were allowed to do. You're allowed to go be in your hotel room, the team room, which is where we had our food. Some like puzzles and shit, like swimmers do like nerdy lame shit, like puzzles and stuff in between. Like they think that's enough to keep the boys buoyed.
Wow. Maybe puzzles with like a fucking case of beer or something.
Yeah. So 3 weeks out from the Olympics, we're allowed in our hotel rooms, we're allowed in the team room, the bus and the pool. So you train twice a day. So you say you're in your hotel room, you go to the team room, had food, go to the bus, training pool, bus back.
Can you go to the shops?
Nah.
Movies?
Too risky. Risky. Everything's risky. So you got team room, hotel room, bus and pool. For for 3 weeks leading into the Olympic Games.
Yeah. So you're bouncing off the walls.
Bouncing off the walls. As sprinters, we're tapering. So like, I'm not training so hard now. Like I am like jumping out of my skin.
Yeah.
Like testosterone is flowing.
Yes.
And so some of the older boys in the relay team are like, oh, we need to let some steam off.
Yeah.
Yep, sweet. We've been doing this thing in the swim team for years. It's a tradition. The boys in the relay team, we get together, we take Stillnox, and we hang out. I've never heard of Stillnox at this stage before in my life. I've never had a sleeping tablet in my life. I've never had problems with sleeping up until that point, which is like really lucky.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people needed Stillnox because you take caffeine at like 9 p.m. at night to race on TV at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Then you got to come home and go to bed and race the next day.
Yeah.
I was really lucky in that I'd never had problems sleeping, so I'd never been prescribed Stillnox, never heard of it. So the boys are like, this is the plan. After dinner, meet at one of the boys' rooms. They'll bring the Stillnox with them because they've been prescribed them. We're all going to take Stillnox and we're going to hang out and bond, basically. 6 of us in a hotel room. And 6 boys.
2 or 3 of us will fall asleep straight away.
So I'm like, yep, done. Again, like I've been on the team 3 years, but I'm still 21 years of age. I still feel a need to want to fit in.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I've got a big enough voice in the team at that stage. Even though I'm the pin-up boy, within the team, I'm still a youngster.
Absolutely.
I don't feel like I've got the authority to go, wait, no, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
Nor would I ever. Like, if there's one thing I've always been, it's one of the boys.
Yeah.
Like, if there's mischief, I'm probably involved in it.
And at this point as well, like, okay, yes, in a perfect world, you wouldn't do it. But at this point, you're not thinking that the fallout is going to be...
No.
You're just thinking it's going to be a night on the piss, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And the whole way it was sold to me was basically like you feel drunk, you act drunk without drinking, and then you can sleep and you can still train the next day. So we get a release of all this energy, we get a release of the pressure, and we get to bond as a team, and then we turn up to training the next day and train as per usual. So it doesn't affect our training. We're 3 weeks out from the Olympics. It's still ages away.
Yeah.
So we go in the room, take the Stillnox, a bit of wrestling, bit of skylarking, like just standard guy shit.
Yeah.
Few prank calls. That was probably where it went wrong, I think. I think that's where it might have leaked. Yeah. And a few boys did some like knock and running in the hallway.
So super, like...
No one leaves the hotel still. Like that's rule number 1 is like you can't leave the hotel.
Yeah.
And we abide by it.
Yeah.
We take the Stillnox at probably 8 p.m. at night. We're in bed by probably 11 p.m. Wake up the next day and I still remember clearly it's probably one of my best training sessions in my lead up to the Olympic Games. Reason being, like I've been feeling the pressure building and building and building. It was just a slight release. Yeah. Even if just for a couple of hours, it was like a weight off my shoulders. The boys, wrestling, back to normal. Yeah, let's go back to training.
Yeah.
And it all finishes and the Olympics finished. No one ever thought of it again. It kind of like left my mind that it even happened because it was just like this small blip in what was a whole Olympics campaign. And then I come home from the Olympics months later. I'm on a training camp and my manager calls me and he said, mate, there's a story that's going to break tomorrow. They're saying this is going to be the biggest story in Australia and it's involving you. He's like, what is it? And I'm just racking my brain like, what have I done? I'm going over every night that I've been out, like every little scenario. I'm like, what? And I'm like, honestly, I don't know what it is. And he goes, mate, I don't know what this is about to be, but it's going to be the biggest story in the country tomorrow. And so I go to bed that night just fretting, like
actually needing a Stillnox.
Yeah. Like what is this story? And I'm thinking like, you're thinking the worst, right? Yeah. Like wake up the next day and, they're calling it like darkest day in Australian sport and all this stuff. This is pre-Stephen Dank. This is like the biggest controversy ever in Australian sport. And it's about the Stillnox night. And I'm like, what? Yeah. Like this is anyway, go to training that day and we're up on the Sunshine Coast on a training camp, swimming that morning and get out of the pool and there's just news trucks everywhere with live broadcast, those big towers doing live broadcast, reporters everywhere outside the pool. And it honestly was the biggest story, that I've ever been a part of, and it was just absolute madness. And everybody had their own take on it, right? One story was like they were on Stillnox. They were on Stillnox and Red Bull. One story was they were drinking and on Stillnox. One story is like they're on Stillnox and they're out partying and clubbing and stuff.
Yep.
They're on Stillnox and they're hassling girls in the team and they're, you know, all these things. And the truth of it, like the real story is so boring.
Yeah.
But it just captured everyone's imagination.
Yeah.
And just went wild.
Wow.
I think to this day, I think people think that we were doing Stillnox like the night before we raced or something.
Yeah.
In the Olympic Village. Well, we weren't even in the village.
That was a feeling that I got, that it was like around competition time.
Yeah.
Like they didn't ever really go, they didn't make a point of saying it was 3 weeks out from Dingo. Like.
And suddenly it became this reason. Oh, the reason that the Australian swim team won gold medals, not the 6 in the room, but the whole swim team, was because these guys were disrupting everyone on Stillnox.
Oh my God.
It's like, what?
Oh my.
What?
One night in 3 weeks before you're even, that's crazy, bro.
Should have said the Mexico story.
Yeah, I mean, was this truly the first time, like this period where you're like, don't get me wrong, the media has its role to play for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we're both technically in media ourselves.
Yeah.
Was it a really eye-opening thing of like, there's a game to be played here with the media that I've got to be a bit smarter at?
Big time. Yeah, big time. And it just, what it did was like it broke that trust for me with the people in the media, which is one thing now I'm in the media myself. It's something that I'm so conscious about. Is like portraying the athlete, the player, the people in the thick of it in a positive light wherever possible, and trying to take into consideration how they would be feeling and acting, and putting myself in their shoes, because so many people in the media can dehumanize athletes and just talk about them like they're not real people, and it's so damaging to the point where one week a reporter will say something about an athlete that's just so far off the mark and so damaging, and the next week come out and write an article for like mental health round in the NRL, and it's like, are you thinking about these athletes as people, or are you thinking about them as, I don't know, almost like robots that play sport on the weekends?
Yeah, it's an interesting like topic, because I feel like any person that is in the media, so like is a profile or whatever, because for so long we've been wired to like, if I know a person, I've met them physically.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like now, because everything is so online, you almost exist as an idea that is disconnected from a human being.
Big time, yeah.
And so whatever idea they want to create, that's the idea that people take to their, put in their head with it. And so in regards to like athletes, I agree with you. Like anyone that's been an athlete will tell you 90% of the time, I'll even go 85 to be conservative. If you ever see someone do something wrong and it's a big beat up, I promise you their intention was not to be a piece of shit.
Yeah.
It's usually from a place of just not thinking, being rattled, or just a human mistake that we make every day of our lives.
Big time. Yeah, and I think as a person in the media, you can be critical and analytical of performance, but when you start going into like character assessments based off what they do in a sporting context, it's like you can't judge a person's character based on the way they play football or the way they swim.
Yeah.
And so many people have said to me post-career, or when they meet me socially or, through the media and stuff like that, they're like, oh, I had it all wrong about you. I thought you were this real arrogant, like, upstart. Like, well, based off what? Oh, well, I read this article about you where it said like this, and I'm like, you formed your opinion of somebody else's opinion.
Yeah.
It's something that I think you learn, having gone through what I've gone through, I will only judge a person based off my own interactions with them. If I haven't met them, I'll reserve judgment. And I pull people up around me all the time on it. Like if my parents or my girlfriend will say something about an athlete, like, oh, he's a dickhead or whatever, I'm like, well, hang on, no, that's what you're perceiving based off what you're seeing on a football field or what you're seeing, let's say, on a tennis court. You've never met him. You don't know what he's like.
Yeah.
You know his sporting persona, You know what people are writing about him and how they're interpreting him. You know how the commentators are, talking about him. But don't let that be your opinion of the person. Make up your own mind based off your own interactions.
Yeah, I agree. And I personally think that every school, I don't know if they do it, but I think that because we consume so much information now, I think every school should teach media literacy.
Yeah.
So teaching children how to consume the media that they are consuming.
Yeah.
So for example, a lot of young kids, and maybe they're getting better at it, but like if you read an article and you don't see a quote from anyone in the situation, look, it might be true. It might be true.
Yeah.
Whatever, it might be true. But let's teach young children that, or kids, that if you don't see quotes, if you see, certain red flags that look like it's an agenda or it's not linking to a source, and all of these different ways to tell whether this is just complete and utter opinion compared to a fact-based report. Yeah. And that steps into the sportsman thing of like, if we taught them media literacy, we'd be like, well, okay, use rugby league, for example. Ex-player wants, he's greedy because he wants 800K.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's private information.
Yeah.
So if you were literate in consuming that media, you would go, okay, it's actually illegal for someone to know that.
Yeah.
So if that is true, how did they get that number? You know what I mean? All these little things that we could teach young people to consume better.
The other thing about, I guess it's social media at the moment, is people feel the right or the obligation to tell people about their opinions.
Yes.
Which I think is even more damaging.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't, let's say I'm a young kid watching Origin. So for me, the best example of this is Cameron Smith, right? Grew up with Queensland dominating New South Wales, and Cameron Smith was the face of that. He was the gun that was just dominating us every year. So in a football aspect, I hated Cameron Smith. Like every time he played the Bulldogs, I'm like, Cameron, like he's the bane of my existence. He's beating us in grand finals. He's beating us and smashing us and everything. But I never met him. Meet him at SEN one day when he's doing the show with you.
Yeah.
Like, geez, he's a nice bloke. Called my dad in the car on the way home. I said, Dad, I just met Cameron Smith. He's like, Cameron Smith, what's he like? And I was like, champion. Great bloke. Super nice, like very respectful, like introduced himself, even though I know it's Cameron Smith.
Yeah.
I'm like, one of the great blokes.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's awesome. Like, how good's that? But that's an ability to be able to separate Cameron Smith, the Queenslander who dominated us for 8 years, and Cameron Smith, the person who's a good bloke.
Yeah.
And most people can't separate the two. They can't separate Latrell Mitchell, the beast footy player who has beaten our Roosters side in a couple of semi-finals in a row, and Latrell Mitchell, the person from Taree who lives and works on a farm and is a knockabout bloke.
Yeah.
Not only can they not separate Latrell Mitchell, the beast footy player, and Latrell Mitchell, the person, they want to let that beast footy player know what they think of them in a private setting. Yeah. And it's a really weird time we're in, and it's a very tough thing for athletes to navigate, I think, is to sift through like whose opinions matter and how do I consume those opinions.
Yeah. It's tougher than ever to be an athlete, I think.
Definitely.
Because
you can't get away from it. You can't switch it off.
You cannot switch it off. Whereas like when we were coming through, you didn't even need to have social media. And obviously, you're a way bigger profile than me. But like if I wanted to go home and play video games and talk to my guildmates or whatever, like I could fully just do that. That was just something that I could do. Yeah. Whereas like nowadays you have to have social media because at the end of your career you want to build up a following, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's a tough landscape.
I came through so Instagram came out just before the London Olympics. So I downloaded Instagram just before the Olympics, and before that you're just getting like messages on Messenger through Facebook and stuff. But they stay in like the hidden if you're not friends with them. And so I was getting like heaps of messages on Insta, and they're, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the full scope. And I was learning on the run then, like how to interpret these messages and how to accept people's opinions of me and stuff like that. And there was no training on it. There probably is training on it now. I hope clubs and organisations coach their athletes about how to handle that feedback. But sometimes you're sitting there and you're getting pumped by someone on social media and you're arguing back. And then you're like, hang on a second, like this could be a 12-year-old kid. Like, why do I care?
Or like a 50-year-old loser with no hope. He's just doing nothing in his life.
Yeah. And so now I'm heaps better with it now. And it's a funny thing as an athlete, and you're probably the same. Like, could you imagine if you could put your mindset right now, if you could put your brain in your 18-year-old body, the difference in what your career would look like?
Mate.
And I sit back sometimes and like I'm only 31 and swimming is a really young sport. Like, you know, I was there from the time I was 18 to 27, super young. But I'm like, if I could put my brain now in that 18-year-old body, it would be an unstoppable force.
Yeah,
because now I know how to play the game with the media.
Yeah.
I know how to handle the pressure and expectation. I've got this really good understanding of life and what it's all about. I know sport isn't the be all and end all. I thought it was. I thought my world was going to end if I didn't touch that wall first. And then I was like, it didn't end. I wish I could take my brain out and just put it in that young body.
You're 100% right. It would be like, it'd be night and day. It'd be literally night and day.
Could you imagine like your preparation, the stretching, the dieting?
From a young age too.
Yeah.
The preventative. You'd go 5 to 10 years longer.
Remember when they'd say like after training, like, we want you to stay and stretch for like 15 minutes? You'd be like, fuck stretching. I hate stretching.
Fuck that.
Trigger ball, like foam roller, like piss off with your trigger ball. 100%. And then, you end up with injuries and stuff like that. But if you had that mindset, man.
Night and day. Literally night and day. So 2012 happens. 2013 comes around and you defend your world championship.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of fire in you because of everything that happened?
It's probably the most pressure I've ever felt because people started saying like, it's, he's a one-hit wonder or whatever, or can't handle pressure. That was a big thing.
You're a world champion.
Yeah. There was just different stories coming out and I was like, I've got to back this up. Like I have to. And that one was like publicly, I'd put a lot of pressure on myself before the Olympics. Privately, the amount of pressure I put on myself before that world title, because I felt like I almost needed to prove to myself that I could handle what was coming my way.
Yeah.
And the pressure was like silly. The amount of articles, and this time it was the opposite.
Yeah.
Going into the Olympics, there was a heap of pressure, but it was all positive. Like we want him to win, we want him to do that. Now there's people saying like, we want this guy to lose.
Yeah.
And some of the rhetoric around was like, we hope he loses, we hope he's done, stuff like that. And so it was almost more pressure, and I had to prove people wrong this time. I didn't feel like, for the Olympics, I felt like I had the pressure of a nation, but a nation behind me. For that World Champs, I felt like I had the pressure of a nation, but half a nation against me.
Yeah, wow.
And all the storylines had changed, like in interviews before the media interviews before the race and stuff. This time people are saying like, do you think you're going to lose, or, are there any plans for Stillnox? Like, it's all just negative. So I'm like, I have to win.
Yeah.
I have to win. I don't know how my life would have been affected if I lost that race. And I think I was coming 8th at the turn in that race. It just panned out to be one of the craziest world title 100 freestyles ever. There was like doping Russians swimming crazy times. This is like peak.
Is this Icarus time?
Peak Icarus.
One of the great docos.
So there's like Russians like swimming out of their minds. The guy that beat me at the Olympics is in the final again. He's in the lane next to me. Like, there was just so much theatre around this race. Yeah. And my girlfriend's dad tells a really... So my girlfriend, her father was the physiotherapist on the Australian swim team. This is before I met her. And he tells a really good story where he says, like I came in for the night of the 100 freestyle. The whole team's in there. They're doing physio. They're doing massages. People are in the warm-up pool. Everyone's like, yeah, James, like, big day. You got this, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's really happy and smiling. And he said, you put your suit on and you got changed in your tracksuit and you walked out of the room, and he said the whole room just went, whoa, like, oh my God. Really? Like the pressure. And he's like, everyone was just looking at each other going, holy shit, like this is feel it. He's like, everyone could feel it. Yeah. And he said everyone stopped what they were doing. All the swimmers got out of the pool, all the physios and masseuses stopped, and they all went up to the grandstands to watch. They're like, we got to see this. Yeah. And he's like, you could cut the air with a knife. He's like, the tension that night, and he said hasn't felt anything like it, just the tension.
Yeah.
Like, this is, what's the storyline here? Like, is he the guy, or is this fairy tale over?
Yeah.
And lucky I didn't see that.
Oh, man.
Because I was already like, man, the pressure was so much. Went out, and one of the better races of my career, and the pressure, the expectation, but the way the race panned out, I had to dig so deep. I remember that last 5 meters. It's probably one of the only times in my career I've done this. I wanted it so bad, and I was gritting and biting down so hard. I closed my eyes the last 5 meters of the race. I know where the wall is. I've done that race so many times. I know it's coming.
Yeah.
But I'm always aware of where I am and what's about to happen. This time, like, we get to 5 meters to go, and I feel like I'm not in front. Like, and so I don't know how this race is going to pan out.
Yeah.
So I just like bite down, grit my teeth, close my eyes, and rip into that wall and touch. And I look up at the board, and it takes a couple of seconds to interpret. Like, it's in a basketball stadium, so they've got that square board up on the roof. And I'm like looking, and then you're in your lanes, and then it refilters to the positions, and it refilters, and it's got Magnussen 1, and then America 2 and 3. And so I realized I've won, and I was just like, like the relief, the absolute relief. And I think I took a bit of time. Then I like paddled out to the 5 meter, like to where the flags are, and the crowd's going like nuts. And I just like took my time, like took it in, and then sat up on the lane rope and like really like took it in. Yeah. And that was probably the coolest moment of my life. Where it was like, I've done it, and it just felt like whatever happened from there on in my life, like I know now. Yeah. Intrinsically, I know. People externally now know, but I know what that pressure felt like. I know how fucked up that was. Yep. And I know that I've got the stones to like cop that and win.
It's the triumph of bouncing back and proving that you're the select few that can bounce back. You know? Yeah. Whereas a lot of people just probably would have rattled them for quite a while.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, and it was more about it was more than the race. Yeah. Like I had to win that race, but I had to prove to myself, and I had to prove to other people that that I had what it takes.
Yeah. It's what an incredible moment. And so what's the media like then? Did they swing back again, or was there still an edge of?
I think for the rest of my career there was always an edge. Okay. There was always an edge, and just as part of, I guess, who I am, like I've always spoken the truth in the media. So I've just had this roller coaster ride my whole career of like the truth has at times made me relatable, and at times got me into trouble. Yeah. So like. Like 1 year they had the Olympic trials in Adelaide. I'm like, I don't want to race in Adelaide in front of a crowd of 10 people. And then like Adelaide goes nuts. And it's one of those things where like most people can insult Adelaide. Like as an NRL player, you could insult Adelaide. You can say whatever you want. They don't care. But when you're a swimmer, you also represent Adelaide. Yeah. So I insulted Adelaide. I ended up having to do a written apology to the Premier of South Australia, because they'd paid to have the Olympic trials in Adelaide. Oh, wow. Another time I said like an off-cuff comment like the Winter Olympics doesn't seem as serious as the Summer Olympics. It's like, boom. Lydia Lasala finishes her run at the Olympics, and they're like, the missile insulted the Winter Olympics. And like, my whole career has been this roller coaster with the media, and I've got myself in so much trouble over the years. And like, sorry to say this, SEN, I'll probably continue to get myself into trouble. But it's part of who I am. Yeah. And it's just part of being honest. Like, I call it how I see it. I'll always take the athlete's perspective, and I won't sugarcoat things, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting how I think a lot of people... I get it, understand Adelaide paid off this money, rah, but like at the end of the day, these are just opinions. They're just opinions and not like calls to violence.
Even on SEN, like a couple of things recently, like there's talk about Kyrgios, and I'm like, I love Kyrgios, and people smash me in the comments, like the text line and stuff. And then the last few days, I'm like, the players should get what they want in this bargaining agreement. Like, what are you saying? Are you telling me that the NRL doesn't want to look after them after their careers?
Yeah.
They don't place any importance on the women's game? Like, what are we arguing about here? Let's get this done.
Yeah.
And people are like, they hate when you take the athlete's side. I don't know why.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think it's also like sometimes maybe the demographic you're speaking to.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
like I think, for example, there'd be a lot of people of the bloke community who would be against the athletes for sure, not denying that. But I think you'd find majority are probably quite open to hearing the athletes' side of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I mean, that's the game you're in. You're paid to give your opinion.
It's funny. Like, I always envision. So you don't realize what you've got in anonymity until it's gone.
Yeah.
Like being able to say anything.
Yeah.
Being able to, like, the weird thing for me was, like, as a 19-year-old kid, suddenly I changed my mindset to, it's 2 a.m, I'm out the front of a nightclub and a guy's absolutely spraying me. And all I'm thinking of, like, what's this going to look like in the papers? The average person's like, how hard am I going to hit this guy?
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
like, what's the repercussions for my sponsorship deals or my TV?
Yeah.
Like, from that moment on, for the rest of your life, it's always like, what are the repercussions of this?
Yeah.
And you never just get to relax. now for sure, I could go overseas and holiday and do whatever and have fun and relax.
Yeah.
But in Australia, will I ever be able to do that again? I don't know. Is that a bad thing? Like, it's stressful at times. I know definitely my parents would love for me to be able to, like, A, shut my mouth, but B, just for them not to be dragged. Like, that's the hardest thing, right? Your parents
get dragged into it.
And they're always defending you, and they always will. But I'm sure they'd love one day for me to step out of the spotlight and just not to ever have another story written about me.
Oh, mate, that's it is the unspoken thing of, like, you know, if you're a professional athlete or whatever, that, you know, you do have a family that they go to work, people ask them about it. They go to functions, people talk about it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just affect the player, it affects people around him.
Especially in a small town like Port Macquarie. Like, you even imagine, like, my brother's 5 years younger than me. So when I'm at the Olympics at 21, 20 years of age, he's like 15 years of age in high school in Port Macquarie. There's only one family in Port Macquarie with the surname Magnussen.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So everything I've ever done in my career has had severe implications on my family because they live in that community and they carry the surname, and there's not many Magnussens around.
Okay, take us through the SAS thing that you went on.
Yeah.
How did that come about and why'd you do it?
Oh,
Crazy
why
man.
did I do it? I still ask myself that. Again, as part of, I guess, the career, the profile, all that stuff, I've been asked to do, like, every TV show under the sun. Like, I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here, Bachelor, Survivor, Dancing with the Stars, like, whatever they all are. Yeah. And I've always said no to all of them because I don't see myself as a reality TV guy. Yeah. And then this SAS one comes to me, and my manager sends me the request, and they send a clip with it of a British version of it. They send this clip, and it's like guys punching on, like fighting, jumping out of planes, like swimming through like filthy creeks in the Amazon and stuff. Yeah. And I just write back to my manager. I'm like, mate, that is insane. No way I'm doing that. Yeah. And then I stopped thinking about it. And then that night in bed, I'm like, and the whole precipice of the show is, are you tough enough to get through this show? Don't ask an athlete that. Yeah. So I go to bed that night and I'm like, I would never quit. Like, I would never quit on that show. And then I'm like, would I quit? No, I wouldn't quit. And like, I start questioning, like, and then I'm like, look at a few more clips of it, and there's like some hardcore dudes on there. I'm like, am I as tough as them? Like, I think everyone thinks they're tough, right? Like, intrinsically, whether you've, you know, been in scraps or played football or whatever, unless you know you're a pussy. When most blokes think when the rubber meets the road, they'll know what to do and how to handle it. Yeah. So you think you're tough. Yeah. And I thought I was like, I'm like, I think I'm tough. And so then I go back to my manager. I'm like, maybe. Yeah. Maybe. And then like he comes through with like formal offers and stuff. We start talking dollars and cents. Yeah. that side of it's nice, but I'm still like, my main drive is like, am I tough enough? And I'm like, and this is the first time it's been on in Australia, so they're blowing it up. They're like, this is going to be big.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm going to do it. And from the moment I said I'm going to do it, I'm like, I'm going to prepare for this, and I'm finishing this thing.
Yeah.
Like I have to finish this thing. So I prepared really well for it. Was super fit for it. Was probably in the best shape I've ever been in, like outside of the pool. But when I'm in my peak shape for racing 100 freestyle, I'm like super low body fat.
Yeah.
Like a strong wind would probably knock me over. Like I raced at 92 kilos.
It's really not a good fitness to be for SAS.
The worst.
Like, because you
probably break bones, dislocate shoulders.
You're almost like a Ferrari, whereas as SAS, you want to be utilitarian to it.
Yeah. You want to be like a Land Rover.
Yeah. Bloody oath.
So like I put on a fair bit of size for it. I started running. I was doing like heap of running, weighted running. I was doing these mad treks, like lifting bigger weights than I'd ever lifted. Like I was just in prime physical condition.
Yep.
And that probably got me through the show more than anything. But I was also thinking, I'm going to go on this show and it can't be as real as it looks, because the British one was just civilians.
Okay.
And then the Australian one, they're like, this is celebrities.
Yeah.
So as soon as you hear the word celebrity, you're like, it's not real.
Yeah.
I was like, celebrities, they're going to say, stop filming, here's a warm shower, here's a meal, here's whatever. And so the first day we get there, they fly us out in these helicopters, one at a time, take us up in these helicopters. You have to stand backwards, drop out of the helicopter head first and land on your head. Like it was so hectic, and it was like super high. I got like a concussion from it and stuff. We come out of that and we fight. So you have to fight. So we come out of the helicopter, we fight. And again, like you can't fake fighting.
Yeah.
We had a headgear on, but my headgear came off because I got a big melon. So I'm it's just a fight.
And also headgears, you're still getting hit. It doesn't, it still hurts.
Yeah. And I've got a decent beak myself. So I'm getting towelled in that. Like, and it's a proper fight. So it was, you know what? That was kind of fun because it's like, I can fight here and there's no repercussions. So that was cool. So we fight. It's full on. It's serious. Like plenty of blood. And then like they smash us in these workouts and stuff. And then we're up near Thredbo in August. So there's like snow around and stuff. Then they put us in the water. The day finishes. They're like, go to your beds. Go to our beds. And it's just this like little camp bed, this bit of material. Yeah. I'm 110 kilos when I go on this show. So heavy.
Big boy.
Lie down on the bed, just go whoomp, straight through it. And I'm lying on the floor. And I'm soaking wet. It's -degrees.
Yeah.
And I'm lying on the floor. I'm like, that's all right. I'm like, can I get another, like, I don't know who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Because there's cameras in there, but they're not crew.
Okay.
I'm just like, can I get another bed? And there's like no reply. And I'm like, I need a new bed. My bed's broken. There's like no reply. And I'm like, oh.
Thinking that like the cameras might be watching. And people
like somebody's like, oh, production comes in and gives me a new bed. Like I need a fucking bed. I can't sleep on the floor. And I'm like soaking wet and freezing cold. I'm like, well, this is fucked at the moment, but like, they'll switch the lights on. There'll be showers because there's no showers, no toilets, no nothing. And I'm just lying there. I'm like shivering. I'm like, I'll come in and get my bed. And I just laid there all night. And then I just remember like hearing the birds and like, I'm like, what? It's like daytime. And the army guys come rushing and they're like, get up, get up, get up. And it's like, go, go, go. And I was like, oh shit, like this is real. And because I went in like at that fitness level and stuff, I got through the physical stuff as best you can.
Yeah. It's the mental shit.
It's all mental.
It's all mental.
Yeah. So the last few days in particular, they didn't feed us. So I lost 11 kilos in 14 days, which is a lot. Yes. It was just freezing cold the entire time, like absolutely freezing. You might get maybe 2 hours sleep a night, say depending on what time of the day you finish, you might sleep between like 10 and midnight or 11 and 1, but then it would drop too far below zero that you'd wake up cold. So then you'd sit up and try and get near fires or stuff during the night to stay warm. So sleeping 1 or 2 hours a night for 14 days, not eating, freezing cold, just constantly shivering. It was just mental warfare.
Oh, mate.
Yeah.
And so you made it all the way to the end, didn't you?
Yeah, I made it to the end, yeah.
And like, What was it like watching other people drop off? Were you surprised? Because like what I always say, I haven't obviously done a 14-day one, but the longest I've done is about 6 days.
Yeah.
And I always say you'll be surprised at the guys you think, or girls, that you think are tough, aren't.
Yeah.
And the guys that you think are weak are actually fucking super tough.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? So the moment we get in there, so we find out who's on the show, right? And you see them all. And one of them's Chappelle Corby. That was a spin out. Yeah. It's like, oh shit, Chappelle. But you see the guys, and again, like, is this cocky or arrogant? Maybe, but I'm like, all right, well, I know I'm going to be at the end because I got no quit in me. But I'm like, who's there with me? I'm like, maybe like 1, 2, 3, I can see being there at the end. And they weren't the people there at the end.
Yeah.
And the people that I like, it's like you said, I'm like, these guys are going to be super tough. They weren't. These guys are going to be pussies. They were tough.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest blokes like cracked really early. Some of the physically fittest people cracked really early. It just didn't have a direct correlation.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, and I think that's where I was super lucky, where I'd come from individual sport, where I'd had so much solo mental dialogue throughout my career. I've spent so long with my head in the water, like talking myself into situations, like, don't be a pussy, don't quit, like, keep going. Like, I've done so much self-talk that, like, getting through this show the whole time in my head. And I was just thinking about my mates. I was like, as soon as I went on there, and my mates basically said when I went on, like, if you quit, we will not let you live this down.
Oh,
like,
mate.
you are done.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking the whole time, like, I cannot quit. And the moment I got back to Sydney, they know I've been gone 14 days, so they know I probably made it to the end. But they don't know for sure. So like, did you quit? And I was like, what do you think? They're like, oh. But then we watched the show together, and like, that was the thing that was driving me. It was more than anything. It was like, do not give these guys ammunition for the rest of your life on national TV.
The boys' banter was what got you through.
The boys' banter. I can imagine the group chat. Every time they just be like, you quit, you pussy.
Was there any moment, when was your weakest moment where you genuinely considered, fuck this shit? Or not genuinely, because I know that once you made that decision in your mind, you're like, I'm going to have to be stretched out here. But the moment where you're like, feeling sorry for yourself.
Yeah, two different moments. First moment, that first night, where I'm like, oh, like, this is the real deal. Like, what am I doing this for? This is dumb. But then I just cracked on. Then the second moment was the last night of the show. So night 13 or 14, wherever you are, they do a torture segment.
Fuck.
So they basically like, you do this big escape thing and whatever, and they put you in a room, they tie you up, they put a blindfold on, noise cancelling headphones with like screaming babies, squealing pigs, like scraping down chalkboard, all this stuff. And they leave you like chained to the ceiling, like standing in this room. And then like they'll take your blindfold off, and they'll be like German shepherds like barking in your face and stuff. And then they put it back on. Yeah. And they take it off. They take you into a room and interrogate you and stuff, and like strip you down to your undies and like shred you. And they made me tip a bucket of water over my head, then sent me back in my undies, like tied up for like hours. And I think the whole torture period went for about 8 hours.
Oh my God.
And it got to a point like halfway through it where it's just getting really weird to the point where you're just questioning. And I imagine if you're trying to get into the SAS, your driving force is, I want to be a soldier. Like, I have to get through this because I want to be a soldier. What the fuck was I doing?
What do I get from this?
I'd never thought of being a soldier in my life. Yeah. All I'm trying to do is not get hammered in the boys' chat. Is that motivation enough? Turns out it was. But I was just sitting there, and I was just shivering uncontrollably. Like, and there's this really weird feeling when you know that there's no warmth coming. Yeah. It's like a basic human need, and you know it's not coming, and it just feels like torture in itself. But then with the noise cancelling headphones, like scraping down chalkboard and stuff, and it's turned up super loud. And it just went so long. I was like, am I going to die? Like, I know that's dramatic, but I'm just thinking, and I've also, I don't know if anyone else is quitting.
Yeah, okay.
So I know when we go into this, there's like 5 of us left maybe.
And so which 5 were left?
So it was the Honey Badger. Yeah. Merrick Watts from Merrick and Rosso, the radio show. Sabrina, she was a women's AFL player, and Molly, who was a rally driver. And I'm thinking in my head, and it's going on and on. It feels like never ending. And when you have no concept of 8 hours and you're blindfolded and noise in your ears, it felt like weeks.
Yeah.
It was so bizarre.
Oh,
and I'm like, is this a joke where I'm the only one left and they're just going to see how long they can film this? Because I'm thinking, I'm like, people can't be lasting through. Surely I'm the last one. Surely. And then they brought us out at the end. It's like Merrick, Honey Badger, and me standing there, and they like pull our blindfolds off. I'm like, oh shit, the boys are still here. But then they start roasting us again. So I knew I wasn't the only one. But at that time, and when it was just going on and on and on, I was like, is this worth it?
Yeah. And like, it feels like there's no end as well.
Yeah.
Because like, almost you can take anything as long as you know there's an end to a degree.
Yeah. It was the last time they took our blindfold off. So they walked us into like this interrogation room. And as they took our blindfold off, it was just before they closed the door. And I could see sunlight. So I was like, the sun's come up. We're into the next day now. And I knew filming was 14 days long. So I was like, I'm into the last day.
Wow,
this is it. Like, can't keep me here forever, boys.
I signed a 14-day contract.
So that was kind of cheating a little bit, I guess. I just saw this glimpse. So I'm like, that was sunlight. I was like, we're into day 14.
Wow.
It can't go more than today. So I was like, grit your teeth, buddy, and like just get through it.
Far out. Is it something that, you know, it gives you this sense of strength of whenever you're feeling down or struggling now, it'll never be as bad as that.
Yeah. So like, I've got a gym and stuff now, and like sometimes I have to get into the gym by 4:45, like 4:45 in the morning. And some mornings you get out of bed and you're just like, oh, like I needed another 4 hours sleep or something. And you go back to that and I was like, I don't need any sleep. Like I don't need, sleep's nice. Food's nice. It's nice to feel, and I came from a high performance world where like everything was monitored. So I spent most of my life feeling pretty close to 100%. At any given day of the week, you could put me on the blocks and I'd be swimming fast because I'm feeling and performing really well all year round. And people thought just because I was an athlete, that transfers really well into SAS. But it's like, I'm not used to feeling like shit. Like this, I feel like I've been on a 3-day bender every time I wake up on this show.
And your eyes are just all fucking groggy. You feel like, oh, I can't get through the day. And then you somehow do get through the day.
You do. And you go, I did it. I did it again. I did it again. You're like, I'm going to get injured. Oh, wait, my body's not that fragile. Like I can hack stuff. Like I can handle stuff. And it does give you a really good perspective on life where you're like, you don't need the creature comforts. They're all nice things, but you don't need them.
The human ability to survive is crazy.
Crazy. And sometimes I think like, what would have happened if they extended that by another 2 weeks? Like at what point would I have quit in me? And again, you like to think that you don't have quit in you, but the lengths that your body can push through, and like the last day, we've been in there where we get let out of torture, and then Sabrina, the AFL player, is a big chick. She's probably 6'2", like full forward, big chick. And they say to me, put her over your shoulders and sprint up that mountain. And now I've just been tortured for 8 hours. I haven't come out of that end. I'm on empty. And I'm thinking, impossible.
Literally can't do it.
I put her up on my shoulders and I fucking run up this mountain.
And
I look back on it now, I'm like, what? Like, what? I was like, I'd lost 11 kilos at this stage. I had no strength left in my body. It shouldn't be possible. But it's possible. And your body, and like, we got to the end and it finished and they're like, the show's over, it's finished. And I'm like, I could probably go again. Like, I probably could. I don't know why.
I think like, you know, even for the longer camps, like the 6 days, I think like by day 3 or 4, and it might have been different, like longer for you as in regards to like, because it was a longer camp, but like you almost get not used to it, but like you just feel like, all right, I'm just going to be miserable. Like you accept that everything is fine.
That's when it kind of got easy. It's like, I'm just going to accept the discomfort. I will not be comfortable again for one moment for 14 days. Like I know my life is as fucked as it possibly could be for 14 days. And as soon as you accept that and go, I'm going to be a smelly, dirty, like tired, just a complete wreck, but I'm going to embrace it. Then it kind of gets easier.
It's
it's that first time when you have to dive in the mud and you're like, or that first time when you're like real cold and you're like, oh, I just want to be warm. As soon as you accept it and go, oh, I'm fucked.
Mate, an incredible achievement. Incredible. 14 days in one of those, Kims. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Just quickly, the retirement.
Yeah.
How did it come about?
Just my body was a bit busted up. So after that second world title, had an awesome run where I went like 2-3 years undefeated.
Yep.
Then had to get a shoulder reconstruction, which just kind of spun my body out a bit. It's probably like an ACL as a runner. You never quite get back to where you want to be. And I found that really frustrating in the last few years of my career. My mind was like so steely, so focused, and my body just would not do what my mind wanted it to do. And then we went through this transition phase of what I had come through as, and 10 years prior, went through another transition phase where I was like the older one on the team now, and all the younger kids were coming on the team.
Yep.
And we were no longer going to Tijuana and stuff. Now we were legitimately doing puzzles in the team room. And I was like, oh, it's just not an environment. That environment didn't motivate me anymore, didn't excite me. Like there'd be a tour coming up to, wherever, a trip overseas, and it'd be like it felt like a drag almost. And I'm like, that's when it's probably time. There's so many other things that I wanted to achieve in my life, but also I was finding it super frustrating that my body couldn't do what my mind wanted it to.
Yeah.
I was almost torturing myself because I was still, every race till the day I retired, I was like, you are going to win this race.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to will myself to win this race.
Yeah.
And I'm willing myself as much as I can, and my body's just like breaking down, like hips, back, shoulders.
Yeah.
And, it's just annoying as a swimmer because it happens so early.
Yeah. Only 27.
27.
Far out.
And like if I was in other sports, I could probably still be going now.
You're hitting your peak.
Yeah.
Hitting your peak.
Yeah. And for a lot of physical stuff, like I am hitting my peak now. But for swimming, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And as a man, as almost each year you put on like a kilo, and it's not, I don't know what it is. It's just like thickening with age, for lack of a better word.
True.
You just get a bit bigger each year, which like slows you down a bit in swimming.
Yeah.
And like I was just getting to that age where I was like, I'm too old for swimming.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, what an incredible run. Ask all the boys this, favourite rapper of all time?
50 Cent?
Yep.
Yeah.
Favourite movie of all time?
Super bad.
Mate. Great answers.
I saw something came out the other day and they're like, I think it was Boss Hunting, did a top 10 funniest movies. Superbad was like 5th. I was outraged.
What was number one?
Hangover. First one. Hangover number 1 is really good.
I can cop that. I mean, Happy Gilmore when it came out was fucking.
Oh yeah, that's elite.
outrageous.
That's top 3 for me.
That was outrageous. Like
That's
when it
top
came
3.
out, the comedy isn't as funny now that I'm older. But
You know what was
when
like
it
number
came out-
2? Bruce Almighty.
No.
And I was like, funnier than Superbad?
No
Like,
way.
leave me
Or Step
right
Brothers?
out.
Or
That's
any-
good. Step Brothers is good.
Any of the Will Ferrell movies?
Probably my top 3 would be Superbad, Step Brothers, and Happy Gilmore. I loved Happy
Mate,
Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore was all time.
But Step Brothers, like, it holds up. Sorry, not Step Brothers. Superbad holds up.
Yeah.
I still get a giggle out of
Mate,
like, it's funny stuff.
McLovin is still funny.
And it just reminds me so much of my teenage years. Like those awkward male teenage years where you just think you're a piece of shit.
Bro, thank you so much for coming on. What an incredible career and journey. And obviously, I'll see you at work, bro.
See you at work.
Boom.